This story begins at Lingyang City No. 1 High School. On the huge school field, thousands of students stand in perfect rows. The atmosphere is tense. Everyone knows today is not an ordinary day. A teacher steps forward and speaks loudly. He tells the students a harsh truth. Only those who enter the Hongdrai class will have a real chance to become warriors in the future. For everyone else, this path will be closed. Next, he explains the rules. The class placement exam is just like the college entrance exam. It has two parts, a cultural test and a martial arts test. The total score is 750 points, 225 points for culture, 525 points for martial arts. Then comes the most brutal rule. Only the top 10 students can enter the Hongji class. No mercy, no exceptions. Soon the cultural exam will begin, and students are ordered to enter the exam hall one by one. For many students, this is their only chance to change their fate. Among the crowd, a quiet boy clenches his fist. This chance means more to him than anyone else. He is our protagonist, Chen Du. He remembers that during his first year of high school, he suddenly collapsed and lost consciousness. His parents were terrified and forced him to take 2 full years of medical leave. While others trained and grew stronger, he was left behind, and he knows this is probably his last chance to become a warrior. This time, he will not let it slip away. As Chen Du walked down the corridor toward the exam hall, he suddenly bumped into a few students who were blocking the way. One of the students laughed and said it was surprising to see Chen Du there. He said he did not expect Chen Du to actually come and take the exam. Another student pointed at him and mocked him, saying everyone had a chance to take the Hongji class exam. Yet Chen Du had taken 2 years off since his first year and still dared to come. The group laughed again. The student in front stepped closer, his face dark and full of malice. He said young people really had guts. He mocked Chen Du for getting sick, taking 2 years off, and still daring to come straight to the Hongji class exam. Chen Du looked at him calmly and replied that there was no need for concern. He said the other person should focus on how to pass the upcoming exam himself. The mocking student suddenly grabbed Chen Du's hand, trying to intimidate him. Chen Du immediately tightened his grip and stopped him. The man's expression changed, and sweat appeared on his face. Chen Du released his hand and turned away. He walked toward the exam room without looking back. The group watched Chen Du walk away, their faces full of anger. One of them said Chen Du was clearly someone who had been bullied in his first year. He could not understand how Chen Du had become so arrogant now. He suggested dealing with him after the exam. Another student clenched his hand and felt lingering pain. He frowned and quietly wondered if Chen Du's grip was a bit too strong. The leader snorted and scolded them, saying they were brainless. He said that if they made a move now and got caught, their exam qualifications would be revoked. He told them to wait until the martial arts assessment before taking action. Inside the exam hall, Chen Du took his seat and turned on the computer. He looked calm and focused, placing his hands on the desk. Other students sat down around him as the room grew quiet. Meanwhile, the leader's face twisted into a cruel smile, red killing intent rising behind him. He said that during the exam they would cripple Chen Du. If Chen Du was accidentally crippled during the exam, no one would be able to say anything about it. Back at his seat, Chen Du stared at the screen as the first question appeared. The exam began with a general knowledge question, asking the students to briefly describe the current world background and the starting day of the high martial calendar. Chen Du looked at the question and frowned, remembering that in the year 2842 of the old era, an otherworldly civilization was discovered. Not long after, they invaded Earth. Humanity responded by launching nuclear weapons. 2 years later, humanity suffered a complete defeat in the total nuclear war. The death toll exceeded 5 billion people. Under full-scale nuclear radiation, human bodies were pushed beyond their limits. Humans began to evolve. Terrifying creatures appeared across ruined cities, and powerful beings rose from the chaos. On August 27, 2860 of the old era, all adults reached life strength level 2. That day marked the end of the old era, and the beginning of a new age. It became known as the initial day of the high martial calendar. The exam continued with more questions. The second question asked about important individuals who made major contributions during the early wars of the high martial calendar. The third question asked what wrong policies different nations proposed to restore world order. A fourth question followed. After finishing the questions, the exam reached its end. Chen Du moved the mouse and submitted the exam. His expression stayed calm. The result appeared. It showed a perfect score. He leaned back slightly and thought about the past. After the incident, he had not slept for 2 years. During that time, he had been badly injured and kept entering a strange space again and again. Inside that space, his spiritual power awakened, and he gained a photographic memory. Because of this, even after being away from school for 2 years, he still had the confidence to take the exam. However, he knew the cultural exam was only worth 225 points. He still needed to go home and properly prepare for the martial arts assessment. Later, Chengdu returned home. As he went inside the house, his dad was preparing dinner. Chengdu walked in with his bag on his shoulder. A card slipped out of his pocket and fell to the floor. His sister nearby bent down and picked it up. She mocked him for being clumsy and warned him not to lose his admission ticket. Moments later, the family gathered around the dining table as dinner was served. Suddenly, Chengdu's father spoke and asked him to look. Chengdu paused while holding his chopsticks. He looked toward the bottle placed on the table and frowned slightly. He asked his father where those qi blood pills came from. His father smiled and explained that since Chengdu was about to take the Hongji class exam, he had bought the qi blood pills to help boost his score. Chengdu looked serious and said that he could get in even without using those pills. His father reached out and patted Chengdu's head, telling him to stop overthinking things. He said that even though he himself could not become a warrior, whether it was Chengdu or his younger sister, the family could still afford to support warriors. He told him to eat well, drink well, and not worry, because there was always a way to make money. Chengdu lowered his head and listened quietly. After a moment, he nodded. A faint smile appeared on his face. Late at night, Chengdu sat cross-legged on his bed, his breathing slow and steady. He thought about the qi blood pills. One bottle alone cost 200,000. Buying them had almost drained the family's savings. In this society, if someone did not become a warrior, they could not even guarantee their family's safety. Chengdu understood this very well. He closed his eyes and focused. Whether tomorrow's exam would go smoothly depended on tonight. As his mind sank deeper, a cold blue light appeared. Energy gathered between his hands, glowing quietly as fragments of crystal floated around him. In the next moment, his consciousness entered a familiar place. Towering crystal pillars rose around him, filling the space with icy light. A sword was stuck in the ground nearby. Chengdu stood there calmly, surrounded by danger. After that incident, every night when he fell asleep, he would enter this crystal space. There were many monsters here. Their goal was to destroy the crystal. To protect it, Chengdu had to fight them. If the crystal was destroyed, he would be unconscious for the entire next day. But if he died while fighting to protect the crystal, he would wake up quickly and be full of energy all day. At first, Chengdu did not dare to fight desperately. Because of that, he kept failing again and again, and his body would remain unconscious the next day. Later, he slowly figured out the pattern. Once he understood that death inside the crystal space led to full energy in reality, things gradually began to improve. Each time he successfully defended against a wave of monsters, his spiritual power increased a little. That growth greatly enhanced his memory and comprehension. Even after being away from school for 2 years, he could still keep up without trouble. But every time he defended against a wave of monsters, the next wave would arrive in 30 seconds. And the process repeated like that until he died or successfully defended against the wave of monsters. However, the unfortunate part was that only the first successful defense of the crystal was effective. The next moment, the battlefield turned violent again. Chengdu rushed forward, slashing through a monster with blazing force. Blood and energy exploded as the creature was torn apart. He flipped through the air, sword still in hand, and smashed down toward the ground. The impact shook the entire crystal space as cracks spread beneath him. Breathing heavily and covered in wounds, Chengdu raised his head. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth as steam escaped with his breath. He stretched out his hand and opened his status window. A blue interface opened in front of him, displaying Chengdu's current status. He looked at the data calmly and thought that with his current stats, it still would not be enough to enter the Hongji class and become an elite warrior in the future. Before he could think further, another alert appeared. The screen announced that the 5th wave of monsters was coming and told the player to prepare. Chengdu narrowed his eyes and lifted his head. In the next moment, a massive red monster rushed out. Flames burst from its mouth as it released a terrifying fire breath. Chengdu reacted instantly. He kicked off the ground and shot forward, dodging through the sea of fire as heat and shockwaves spread around him. He landed hard, gripping his sword tightly, sliding across the cracked ground. The monster attacked again, swinging its claws down with overwhelming force. Chengdu leaped sideways and raised his blade. Then he leaped high into the air, sword pointed downward, aiming straight at the giant red lizard's body. The monster twisted violently. Its massive tail swept across the battlefield like a red storm. The strike slammed into Chengdu midair. His body was sent spinning, blood spraying as the impact shook his bones. He forced himself to twist his body and barely stabilized before hitting the ground, rolling across the scorched earth. The giant lizard did not stop. Its huge body surged forward, pressing down with overwhelming presence. Chengdu pushed himself up, gripping his sword tightly. After experiencing so many deaths, he had finally grasped the giant lizard's attack patterns and rhythm. His eyes sharpened. Spiritual power surged around his body as he stepped forward without hesitation. He charged straight at the monster, sword glowing as he thrust upward toward its head, launching his counterattack with precise timing. Chengdu activated his sword, flowing light sword technique. A blue sword light burst forward like a sharp breeze cutting through the forest. The attack slammed into the giant red lizard's body, sparks and energy exploding on impact. The monster roared in pain. Its eyes burned red as its aura suddenly surged. It went berserk. Chengdu was pushed back by the violent backlash. He twisted his body in midair and barely stabilized himself, landing hard on the lizard's body. He frowned and admitted that he had been careless, but at least he was not seriously injured. The giant lizard opened its mouth wide and let out a furious roar, flames and killing intent flooding the area. Chengdu steadied his breathing and tightened his grip on the sword. He told himself to stay calm. This time, he would definitely win. The red-scaled monster swung its massive body, opening its mouth wide as it roared. Its sharp fangs flashed, and sparks scattered through the air. Wrapped in blue light, Chengdu shot forward like a streak of lightning. His body cut through the air, closing the distance in an instant. The monster's eyes widened. It opened its jaws even wider, its tongue lashing out as it tried to swallow him whole. A loud impact echoed as Chengdu twisted his body midair and narrowly avoided the bite. He spun away, blue energy surging around him as he was flung backward by the force. His feet scraped through the air as he steadied himself. His face tightened, teeth clenched, sweat running down his cheek. His eyes stayed locked on the monster. The red beast suddenly reared back and spewed a torrent of flames. Fire roared forward, filling the space between them. Chengdu leaped again, using the monster's size to his advantage. He darted downward, slipping beneath its attack, his blue aura blazing brighter. In the next moment, he dove straight toward the monster's lower body. His attack came crashing down like a falling blade, the force tearing through the air as he struck. The red-scaled monster raised its head and released a blazing stream of fire. Flames poured from its mouth, lighting up its chest as heat spread in all directions. Chengdu reacted instantly. His body burst with blue light as he shouted, activating agility. He tightened his grip on the sword and surged upward. In the next moment, his blade came down in a straight line of blue light. The strike crashed onto the monster's head with overwhelming force. The impact shook the ground. The monster let out a furious roar as its massive body slammed downward. Rocks shattered and debris flew everywhere. Blue energy exploded across the monster's body. Chengdu landed firmly, sliding to a stop as the glow around him slowly faded. The sword was now deeply embedded in the monster's body. The red giant collapsed, completely crushed. A system notification appeared in front of Chengdu, congratulating him for successfully defending against 5 waves of monster attacks. His spiritual power level increased by 1. Another notification followed, stating that the defense waves were fully completed, and that a void immortal visualization method had been obtained. Chengdu stared ahead, shocked. Sweat slid down his face as he processed the reward. He thought that the increase in spiritual power itself was nothing special, but this visualization method was different. He then remembered what the school had explained before. Visualization methods were a rare type of technique, one that could actively cultivate spiritual power. Although he could increase his spiritual power level through system rewards, this kind of benefit was always better to have more of. Just as that thought settled, a system notification appeared, warning the host to prepare because the next wave of monsters was about to arrive. Chengdu turned his head to the side, breathing heavily. Steam escaped his mouth as dust and debris slowly drifted down around him. His eyes suddenly sharpened. In the distance, a strange pressure descended. The air darkened, and countless shadows began to emerge. A group of monsters gathered together, their massive bodies overlapping one another. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness, filled with killing intent. Chengdu stared at them, his expression turning serious. He quickly judged the situation. Each of those monsters had life strength one level higher than his own, and there were a full 30 of them. From his reaction, it was clear that passing this stage would not be easy anytime soon. After that, he returned to reality. Later, he sat quietly, cross-legged in his room, his hands resting together as he tried to calm his breathing. He decided to put everything else aside and check the visualization method first. A glowing blue interface unfolded in his hand. Lines of light flowed like data as the method activated. In the next instant, the world around him changed. He found himself standing on a vast, glowing surface that looked like flowing water made of light. Blue fragments drifted in the air. His eyes widened in surprise as he looked around, trying to understand where he was. Then, a terrifying presence appeared. In the distance, an enormous shadow rose up. A giant figure stood before him, its body towering into the darkness. Its many eyes glowed red, staring straight at him with overwhelming pressure. Chengdu felt his breathing tighten. He lifted his head slowly and finally understood why it was called a visualization method. As long as he gazed at this giant, it would put him through trials. Back in the real world, he sat cross-legged on the bed. Blue flames of spiritual energy surrounded his body, rising and falling as he entered cultivation. The room was silent, filled only with the faint hum of energy. Suddenly the door swung open, and Chengdu's sister called him to come out to eat. Chengdu stood beside the bed, wiping his body with a towel. Sweat traced down his muscles, his physique clearly more defined than before. His sister watched him and teased that he seemed a bit more handsome. He glanced over, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. He replied calmly, questioning whether he had not been handsome before. The girl puffed up in protest. She stepped closer, then suddenly yelped as he reached out and rubbed her head. She struggled and complained loudly, saying that he was messing up her hair. The girl froze for a moment, staring at him with wide eyes. A faint blush spread across her face as she muttered in confusion, wondering if her brother had always been this handsome. In front of the mirror, Chengdu examined his reflection in silence. His expression grew thoughtful as he noticed the subtle changes in his body. He wondered if this was the effect of the Void Immortal visualization method. Not long after, he finished getting ready and shouldered his bag. Before leaving, he called out that he was heading to the exam. From behind him, his father reminded him to be careful on the road. The scene shifted to Liang City, No. 1 High School Sports Arena. Sunlight filtered through the high ceiling, as the vast indoor court slowly filled with students. Chengdu stood on the arena floor, stretching his arms and loosening his shoulders. As he moved, he could clearly feel the changes in his body. Strength flowed smoothly through his limbs, and his breathing felt steady and controlled. He silently confirmed that the Void Immortal visualization method was working well. He could feel improvements in every aspect of his body. While he was warming up, a mocking voice suddenly rang out. Someone recognized him and spoke with a tone full of sarcasm, calling him the so-called genius student Chengdu, who had taken 2 years off from school. Chengdu paused his movement and turned his head slightly, his expression calm. The voice continued, growing louder and more arrogant. They sneered that he used to be a bottom-ranked student, had skipped school for 2 years, and still dared to take the Hongzi class assessment. They mocked him, pretending to praise his kindness for coming just to raise the bottom rankings. Chengdu looked at them quietly. Then he spoke in a flat, steady voice, saying that he was still better than someone who could not even pass the cultural exam. The atmosphere instantly changed. One of the students' faces twisted in anger. Another shouted furiously, demanding to know what Chengdu had just said. Chengdu looked at them calmly and spoke with a faint smile. He said that if someone could not even hear such simple words clearly, then they were probably not qualified to take the exam. The leader's expression darkened immediately. He warned Chengdu not to push his luck. Chengdu glanced at him and telling him not to take things so personally. Before the situation could escalate further, another student hurried forward and raised both hands to stop them. He laughed awkwardly and said that the assessment was what truly mattered. If something really happened and a teacher showed up, it would not be good for anyone. The angry group clicked their tongues in dissatisfaction. As they turned to leave, the leader looked back and threw out a cold warning, telling Chengdu to just wait and that he would get what was coming to him soon. After they walked away, one of Chengdu's classmates rushed over, panic written all over his face. He grabbed Chengdu's sleeve and said anxiously that he was done for. Chengdu remained calm and replied that it was fine. He would deal with things as they came. The classmate shook his head and explained nervously that this was not something Chengdu could take lightly. He reminded him that he had taken 2 years off from school. Lowering his voice, the classmate revealed the reason for Feng Rui's arrogance. Feng Rui's second uncle had become the dean of academic affairs at the school. It was rumored that the dean had already leaked the martial arts assessment questions to Feng Rui this year. Chen Du listened quietly, his expression turning serious. In his heart, he concluded that he needed to be careful. It seemed Feng Rui might collude with teachers to sabotage him during the assessment. Just then, a large announcement panel appeared, clearly explaining the rules of the martial arts assessment. The test would consist of 2 parts, a strength test followed by combat duels. All examinees were instructed to enter their assigned exam rooms in groups of 10, according to their exam numbers. The strength test would begin first. As the students lined up, Chen Du's classmate reminded him that the exam was about to start. He told him not to think too much and just get in line. Soon the group was led into the testing area. A massive sandbag device stood before them, shaped like a strange creature with glowing red eyes. The atmosphere instantly became heavy. New rules were announced. The exam would use a last-place elimination system. Everyone had to strike the sandbag with full force at the same time. Those with the lowest scores would be eliminated on the spot. Murmurs spread through the group. Chen Du's classmate complained that this year's strength test was far too harsh. Chen Du listened quietly. He remained composed as he analyzed the situation. He reminded himself that there was still a combat duel coming afterward. Conserving strength was important. His gaze sharpened. He made a simple decision in his heart. He would win with speed. Blue energy surged around his arm as he stepped forward. His fist tightened, his expression cold and focused. As he prepared to strike, Feng Rui cracked his knuckles and laughed confidently, saying that this test was a piece of cake and that he had strength to spare. A clear announcement rang out across the arena, declaring that the first group's assessment had begun. Chen Du stood, his expression calm and focused. Across from him, Feng Rui's face appeared fierce and twisted with arrogance. His red eyes filled with excitement as killing intent surged. In the next instant, Feng Rui stepped forward. He roared as he swung his fist with full force. Red energy exploded around his arm as his punch smashed into the sandbag. A deafening impact shook the arena. The massive sandbag caved inward, waves of force rippling outward as dust and shockwaves filled the air. The crowd froze for a moment, then erupted. Students shouted in excitement, calling Feng Rui amazing and praising his overwhelming strength. Someone yelled that it was exactly what they expected from him, and that he was far too strong. More voices followed, whispering in shock. They said they had heard Feng Rui's strength had already reached nearly 1,400 jin. One of Feng Rui's followers smirked and pointed ahead, saying that their boss had taken first place and that someone else was probably going to be eliminated this round. In the next instant, Chen Du moved. His figure blurred. A deep pressure surged through the air as his fist shot forward. A violent shockwave exploded across the testing area. The sandbag caved in with a thunderous boom, its massive body warping violently as the force tore through it. For a moment, the entire arena went silent. Students froze in place, eyes wide in disbelief. Someone shouted in shock, asking what had just happened. Another voice trembled as it reported the result. 1,500 jin of punching force, achieved at only life strength level 5.1. Feng Rui's confident expression cracked. He turned his head sharply, veins bulging as disbelief flashed across his face. Whispers erupted everywhere. People questioned which class Chen Du was from, how he could be this strong, and why his name had never appeared in the top 50 last year. From the crowd, Chen Du's classmate jumped up excitedly and shouted at the top of his lungs, calling Chen Du his bro. Behind him, others stared in shock, unable to accept what they had just seen. Chen Du's classmate screamed in disbelief, wondering when his bro had become this terrifyingly strong. The examiner stood with his arms crossed, his fingers resting against his chin as his eyes narrowed. He thought that a life strength level of 5.1 normally corresponded to only 1,000 jin of punching force, and that no one in the Hongji class could achieve such a result. To think that a student this capable existed in a regular class made no sense. He suspected it might be due to Chen Du's martial skills. He then spoke again, asking to see Chen Du's file. A staff member quickly handed over the documents. As the examiner read, his gaze sharpened. The file stated that Chen Du was a regular class student who had taken 2 years off and had still managed to reach first-order martial strength at 55%. The examiner lowered the file and looked toward the arena, his eyes filled with interest. He said that this afternoon, he would have to take a good look at Chen Du's true strength. The scene shifted to the combat arena, where the examiner stood alone in the center. He stepped forward with a list in hand and announced loudly that students whose names were called should come up for their combat duels. The examiner called out Chen Du and Feng Rui and asked them to come to the combat arena. The two figures stood facing each other, their expressions completely different. Chen Du looked calm and cold, while Feng Rui wore a twisted smile full of confidence and hostility. Among the students watching, whispers spread quickly. Someone said that even though Chen Du had just returned to school, his strength test score was unbelievable. They wondered if he could really win this time. Another student shook his head and replied that it was impossible. He said Feng Rui would definitely win. Combat duels depended on martial skills, not raw strength. Having strong power alone did not give much advantage. On the arena, Feng Rui stepped forward and pointed his weapon at Chen Du. He warned him not to think that beating him in the last round meant he would be lucky again this time. Chen Du stopped and slowly turned his head. His expression remained relaxed. A faint smile appeared on his face as he replied that he hoped Feng Rui could still be this arrogant later. The tension between the two instantly filled the arena. Feng Rui attacked first. He charged forward with his metal staff, his movements sharp and aggressive. His foot slammed into the ground as he swung, the force tearing through the air. Sparks burst out where the weapon passed, carrying the intent to suppress his opponent through pure martial power. Chen Du moved at the same time. He stepped in, his body light and controlled. As the staff came down, he raised his sword and blocked it cleanly. The clash rang out loudly, sending shockwaves across the arena. In the next instant, Chen Du counterattacked. His sword flashed upward, forcing Feng Rui back. Feng Rui's eyes widened as he hurriedly twisted his body, barely avoiding a direct hit. The impact still sent him flying, his body flipping in the air before crashing down hard onto the ground. Feng Rui landed on one knee, gripping his staff tightly as he struggled to steady himself. His expression twisted in disbelief and anger. In Feng Rui's mind, a thought screamed out. Chen Du, the one who could enter the Hongdai class, would definitely be him. A violent aura suddenly burst out from Feng Rui's body. His eyes glowed red as he roared and leaped forward again, gathering all his strength into a single desperate strike. He slammed his weapon down with full force. Chen Du reacted instantly. He stepped forward and thrust his sword straight ahead. A sharp beam of force shot out, tearing through the air like a blade of light. Chen Du's gaze remained calm as sparks drifted past his face. He thought to himself that fighting real people was somewhat different from fighting monsters in the crystal space. In the next instant, he moved. His body twisted sharply as orange lights surged around him. He stepped in and struck, his attack spinning like a blazing arc. The force exploded outward, ripping through the air with violent momentum. The impact crashed down like a falling pillar of light. The arena shook as power slammed straight into Feng Rui. Feng Rui was thrown backward. His body spun uncontrollably as the shockwave tore through the ground beneath him. Dust, debris, and fragments burst into the air. Chen Du did not stop. His eyes narrowed as he followed up instantly. He saw it clearly. Feng Rui's stance was unstable. Before Feng Rui could recover, a cold blue light erupted. A sharp breeze swept across the arena as Chen Du unleashed his technique. The attack descended like flowing wind beneath a forest canopy, clean and precise, yet overwhelmingly sharp. The blue energy surged upward, cutting straight through Feng Rui's defense. Feng Rui's body was lifted into the air, completely overwhelmed. As the force swallowed him whole, Feng Rui suddenly coughed violently. Blood sprayed from his mouth as his eyes widened in pain. In the next moment, Feng Rui's hand moved. A short blade flashed as he drew it smoothly, his expression cold and focused. Chen Du stepped in without hesitation. His sword came down in a sharp arc, the strike carrying overwhelming force. The impact landed squarely on Feng Rui, sparks bursting at the point of contact. Feng Rui tried to resist, his face twisting in fear and shock. But before he could recover, Chen Du closed the distance. A heavy punch smashed straight into Feng Rui's face. The sound echoed sharply. Feng Rui's eyes rolled back as his body flew backward. He crashed hard onto the ground, limbs limp, completely knocked out. The arena fell silent for a split second. In the stands, students stared in disbelief. Someone shouted that Chen Du had actually won. Another voice yelled in shock, unable to understand what had just happened. Some even muttered wildly, wondering if Chen Du had taken drugs or done something unbelievable. On the arena floor, Feng Rui lay motionless. The examiner raised his hand and spoke calmly, ordering the medical team to check Feng Rui's condition. He then announced that the students in the next combat duel should prepare. Just then, the examiner called out for Chengdu to wait a moment. Chengdu paused and turned his head. A bead of sweat slid down his face as he looked back calmly. Teacher Ling stood in the arena, hands behind his back, his expression steady and composed. Chengdu stepped forward and lowered his head slightly. He apologized, saying that he had been too caught up in the moment and had failed to control his strength properly. Teacher Ling looked at him for a second, then spoke in a calm tone. He said that getting injured in combat duels was normal and told Chengdu not to worry about it. He reminded him to be more careful next time and added that Chengdu had worked hard today. Before dismissing him, he casually told him to remember to stretch when he got home. Chengdu straightened and thanked his teacher respectfully. As Chengdu stepped aside, Teacher Ling's gaze shifted toward the direction Feng Ruoyi had been taken. In his mind, he noted that Feng Ruoyi had been beaten badly, yet had not suffered any serious external injuries. It was most likely because of Chengdu's overwhelming advantage in martial skills. Teacher Ling clenched his gloved fists slightly, his expression turning thoughtful. He then called Wang Sai, telling him to contact the principal immediately. Wang Sai responded loudly, acknowledging the order without hesitation. Meanwhile, Chengdu walked down the quiet hallway, his footsteps echoing softly. He thought to himself that it was still early. His father and sister would not be home until later. Soon he stopped in front of a large machine, the virtual combat pod. He looked at it calmly. Although he could not afford real one-on-one sparring partners, the school had provided every student with one of these. He stepped closer, recalling how it worked. As long as he lay down inside, the system would automatically match him with opponents of similar skill level for combat training. Since he had always been fighting monsters in the crystal space, he had not done much virtual combat. Because of that, his current rank was only bronze. Reaching out, he plugged the cable into the socket. As the machine powered up, another thought crossed his mind. Feng Ruoyi had lost badly today. Because of that, there was a high chance someone would try to cause trouble for him, all to stop him from entering the Hongji class. Chengdu stood in front of the open virtual combat pod, quietly observing the seat inside. He knew that every combat record from the virtual pod would be uploaded to the Blue Star Youth Rankings, a special leaderboard created for college exam students. It was also known as the Genius Rankings. This ranking represented pure martial skill strength and was recognized across all ecological zones worldwide. Even many students from the Hongji class had failed to appear on this list. Chengdu sat down and slowly closed his eyes. He understood clearly that as long as he could make a name for himself on the Blue Star Youth Rankings, he could earn his way into the Hongji class through real ability alone. The pod activated. Light flickered, and his surroundings changed as the virtual space formed around him. His body appeared inside the simulation, standing on a clean white platform. He thought calmly that ever since obtaining the crystal space, he had barely used the virtual combat pod. He decided to warm up with a single match first. Blue data fragments gathered in front of him. Chengdu looked ahead, slightly puzzled. He wondered where his opponent was. At that moment, before Chengdu could react further, a calm voice echoed in the space. In the next instant, a blur of motion descended from above. A purple-haired female figure dropped down with deadly precision, blade flashing as she aimed straight for Chengdu. The moment the purple-haired girl struck, Chengdu reacted instantly. He twisted his body and raised his sword, barely blocking the sudden attack. The impact exploded with force, shockwaves rippling across the ground. The girl landed lightly and smiled. She praised him, saying that his reactions were pretty good. Then her expression sharpened. She reminded him that this was not a school exam where opponents waited politely before attacking. In real combat, hesitation meant death. Chengdu straightened, gripping his sword tighter. He calmly replied that the lesson was learned. From now on, he would not give her another chance to ambush him. Blue light flared around his body. As his aura surged, the two clashed again. Their figures twisted through the air, blades colliding again and again. Blue arcs of light tore across the battlefield as Chengdu advanced aggressively, forcing the girl back step by step. A powerful move burst forth. Azure Dragon Thrust. Chengdu's sword shot forward like a raging dragon, the strike sharp and overwhelming. The girl's eyes widened slightly as she dodged at the last moment. She looked at him in surprise and pointed out that he had used Azure Dragon Thrust. She noted that it was clearly a thrust-type move, yet he was wielding it like a sword technique. Chengdu pressed forward without hesitation, launching another fierce attack. As she retreated, the girl spoke again, her tone turning instructive. She told him that the 4 flowing light forms did not need to be confined to a single shape. What mattered was understanding the true essence of the martial skill itself. Chengdu felt his mind snap into clarity. He realized that sword techniques should never be trapped by rigid forms. Power was meant to flow freely, not be restrained by labels or structure. As his blade swung, a sharp arc of light cut through the air. At the same time, a doubt flashed through his mind. He wondered how the girl knew his sword technique so clearly. Before he could think further, her voice rang out, warning him not to get distracted. She moved like lightning. Her strength was overwhelming, and Chengdu could not tell what basic martial skill she had learned. Every strike felt unfamiliar, yet perfectly refined. The girl flipped through the air and pressed down relentlessly. Chengdu raised his sword to defend, but his focus slipped for just a moment. She seized that opening. She shouted that he had let his guard down. Purple energy exploded as her attack slammed into him. Chengdu cursed in frustration as his body was sent flying backward. The impact shattered the space around him. The virtual battlefield dissolved. A system screen appeared, announcing the result. The pig-masked Chengdu was defeated. The match ended with the little girl's victory, and 10 victory points were awarded. As the light faded, a final thought crossed Chengdu's mind. She could have defeated him easily with raw strength alone. Yet she still chose to ambush him. Chengdu sat in the virtual space, tapping his temple, as the girl's words echoed in his mind. He told himself to think more about the essence of the martial skill. He recalled the flowing light sword technique. It had 4 forms in total, and right now the only one he had not fully grasped was Azure Dragon Thrust. As a thrusting move, its nature was closer to that of an assassin, fast, precise, and deadly. That realization hit him hard. Assassins excelled at ambushing, while his own fighting style was far too straightforward. Without hesitation, Chengdu reached out and tapped the virtual keyboard. He decided to test this theory in actual combat. Without wasting any time, he started the next match. A massive opponent appeared before him. A towering, muscular man wielding a heavy chain weapon. Chengdu looked up at the iron ball dragging along the ground and felt immediate pressure. He complained inwardly that he had just run into a sneaky player, and now the system had matched him against someone with a clear weapon advantage. He wondered what kind of insane matchmaking system this was, but without thinking any more, Chengdu charged forward, blue light surging beneath his feet as he closed the distance. In his mind, he stayed calm. Even if the opponent had a weapon advantage, his martial skill was clearly higher. The advantage was his. A wave of sword light surged upward like a pillar, forcing the massive man to brace himself. Sparks and energy scattered as the attack cut through the air. The ground trembled, as if space itself were being torn apart. The heavy man sneered and shouted that this was not how a sword should be used. He mocked Chengdu, saying that just because Chengdu's martial skill was slightly better did not mean he could act however he pleased. Before the words even finished echoing, the sword light struck. Blood sprayed from the man's mouth as his body was thrown back violently. His face twisted in pain and shock as the force overwhelmed him. The iron ball chained to his arm was suddenly smashed aside. The impact exploded with a deafening roar, like the drums of war beating across the battlefield. The massive weapon was knocked completely off course. A violent burst of blue light erupted as Chengdu moved. The sword intent surged like a raging wind, spreading outward in layers. A move activated. Breeze beneath the forest. The heavy iron ball trembled violently as the energy crashed into it. The massive man's eyes widened in shock. He had not expected the attack to change direction so suddenly. Before he could react, Chengdu vanished from his sight. In the next instant, Chengdu appeared behind him. Chengdu's body twisted midair, his sword thrusting down with precision. The blade plunged straight past the man's defense. The opponent's face froze in disbelief. He shouted in shock, unable to understand how Chengdu had moved from the front to his back in a single breath. Blue light coiled around the sword like a living dragon. Azure Dragon Thrust. The thrust pierced through with explosive force. The man's body convulsed as blood sprayed from his mouth. The overwhelming power crushed him completely. The iron ball slammed to the ground with a deafening crash, the chains rattling uselessly behind it. A system screen appeared, congratulating Chengdu for winning and earning 10 points. Chengdu stood still, lowering his sword. Blue particles slowly faded around him as he looked down at his hands. He realized that this was the first time he had successfully executed Azure Dragon Thrust. Chengdu stood quietly. His pig mask tilted slightly as blue light drifted around him. A thought surfaced in his mind. He wondered why the sword was called ingenious. As his understanding deepened, he realized that ingenious did not mean mere dexterity. It meant adaptability. The sword could be hard or soft. It could be hidden or revealed. It could strike like thunder, fierce and unstoppable, or flow gently like calm water. As the final form of the flowing light sword technique, Azure Dragon Thrust was not meant to be rigid. It was meant to teach him this truth. The sword was not bound to a single stance or method. It could be wielded openly and honorably, or used for sudden covert strikes. Standing there, Chengdu lowered his sword slightly. His eyes sharpened behind the mask. He understood now. The sword was a weapon that defied definition. A system notification appeared. Congratulations, host. Flowing light sword technique increased from first order 89% to first order 90%. Chengdu smiled faintly. Another system message followed, its tone urging him onward. Combat deepened understanding. One more battle. Another notification flashed. Congratulations, host. Flowing light sword technique increased. Chengdu tightened his grip on the sword. System messages continued to appear, one after another, as his comprehension steadily rose. Each clash sharpened his insight. Each fight refined his sword. After continuously refining his sword technique and winning many matches, Chengdu became so hungry that he decided to take a short break and come out of his virtual combat pod. A system voice congratulated him, announcing that he had entered the top 10,000 of the Blue Star Youth rankings. Chengdu froze. His eyes widened as he stared ahead, stunned by what he had just heard. He repeated the words slowly, unable to believe them. Top 10,000 of the Blue Star Youth rankings. After a brief pause, he spoke again, telling the system to show him all his ranking details. The interface immediately responded. Blue Star Youth rankings. Rank 622-9, 7th Ecological Zone Youth rankings. Rank 654, Giant Bear Domain, Youth rankings. Rank 55, Purple Cloud District Youth rankings. Rank 7, Liang City Youth rankings. Rank 1. The system confirmed the request with a calm reply. Chengdu's breathing quickened as he read through the results. His expression shifted from shock to excitement. He had not expected that after mastering Azure Dragon Thrust this time, he would become first in all Liang City Youth rankings. His grip tightened on the armrest. A wide smile spread across his face as excitement burst out of him. In his heart, he knew it was settled now. His place in the Hongji class was secured. After that, Chengdu walked along the road with a backpack on his shoulder, heading toward his home. But suddenly, someone shouted his name. Chengdu paused and turned his head. A middle-aged man stood not far away, pointing at him with a stern expression. He scolded Chengdu, saying that seeing a teacher and not greeting him was ill-mannered. The man was Feng Liguo, the Dean of Academic Affairs of Liang City No. 1 High School, and Feng Rui's second uncle. Chengdu turned around fully and greeted him politely, calling him teacher. Nearby students watched quietly. Some of them stared at Chengdu's armband, their expressions changing as recognition slowly spread. Feng Liguo frowned and spoke again. He announced that this semester, as the Dean of Academic Affairs, he would personally conduct uniform inspections. He pointed at Chengdu and questioned what he was wearing. Chengdu lowered his gaze slightly and replied calmly that it was the school uniform. A few students nearby let out suppressed laughter. Feng Liguo suddenly shouted for silence. Whispers still spread among the students. Some said that Chengdu was in trouble, that Feng Rui had still not been discharged from the hospital, and that his second uncle would definitely seek revenge. Others claimed they heard Chengdu had won by using banned substances and said he deserved what was coming. Someone else muttered in confusion, saying they thought Chengdu was actually that strong. Feng Liguo suddenly lashed out. He raised the wooden baton and struck down, shouting angrily that this, and this, all of it failed. Chengdu tilted his head slightly and avoided the blows. His expression remained calm. He spoke evenly, saying that everything he was wearing complied with school rules, and he did not understand what was failing. Feng Liguo's face twisted with rage. He pointed at Chengdu and roared, demanding how he dared to talk back. The baton came down again. This time, Chengdu reached out and caught it firmly in his hand. The motion was clean and direct. The strike stopped instantly. Feng Liguo froze for a moment. Then he shouted even louder, accusing Chengdu of being disobedient and defying teachers. He declared that he would report Chengdu to the principal and have him expelled. Just then, a calm voice cut through the tension. Someone asked who was looking for him. Chengdu stood holding the broken baton, his expression steady. Feng Liguo stiffened and turned his head. Two men walked forward from the crowd. One was Li Mu, the principal of Liang City No. 1 High School. The other was Wang Antran, the mayor of Liang City. The surrounding students fell silent. Feng Liguo hurried forward, pointing excitedly and shouting that it was him, Chengdu. Li Mu stopped in front of Chengdu and looked at him carefully. His expression softened slightly. He asked if Chengdu was really Chengdu. Chengdu was startled for a moment, then nodded and replied that he was. Li Mu smiled faintly and spoke again. He said they had come specifically to see him and introduced the man beside him as Mayor Wang. Chengdu straightened his posture and greeted them politely. He asked what this was about. Mayor Wang laughed loudly. He said that Chengdu had become No. 1 in the Liang City youth rankings and had even entered the top 1% of the Blue Star youth rankings. Because of that, he naturally had to come and see what kind of prodigy Chengdu was. The words landed like a shockwave. Feng Liguo froze. His eyes widened as he shouted in disbelief, asking if Chengdu was really in the top 1% of the Blue Star youth rankings. Behind him, the surrounding students stared in shock, mouths hanging open as the truth finally sank in. Whispers spread through the crowd. Students stared at Chengdu in awe, exclaiming that he was actually that amazing. Someone muttered that, with that level of strength, Chengdu would never need drugs to defeat Feng Ru. Others excitedly said that Brother Du was so talented that he was definitely getting into the Hongji class. Amid the noise, Li Mu spoke calmly and told Chengdu to come with them to the conference room first. He said there was something they needed to discuss. Feng Liguo sat collapsed on the ground, completely ignored. Chengdu nodded and replied with a simple yes. He walked away with the principal and the mayor as the students watched in silence. The scene shifted to the conference room. Chengdu entered and politely greeted them again. Inside, two students were already present. One was Lu Bo, a senior from Liang City No. 2 High School and second place in the Liang City youth rankings. The other was Mo Leitrai, from Liang City No. 1 High School's Hongji class, ranked No. 1 in that class. They exchanged brief glances. They did not know each other. Their eyes met, then shifted away almost at the same time. The atmosphere was quiet and slightly awkward. After everyone took their seats, Wang Anchuan leaned forward and got straight to the point. He explained that the 100 cities under Purple Cloud District's jurisdiction were preparing to hold a competition for high school seniors, and that each city would send its top 3 senior students based on martial skill rankings, using the rankings as of 6 p.m. the previous night. The teams would be led by a warrior of level 15 or above, and would participate in a 3-day 100 cities championship held at High City No. 1 High School. As the explanation went on, Chengdu listened quietly. Mayor Wang then revealed the rewards. He said the top 10 finalists in the championship would receive different amounts of college entrance exam bonus points and prize money, starting at a minimum of 10 bonus points and 100,000 yuan. Chengdu lowered his gaze slightly, his expression turning serious. Mayor Wang looked at him and asked if he was willing to participate. Before Chengdu could answer, Mo Leite raised his hand and spoke. He asked the mayor why the competition was not using virtual combat, since it was based on martial skill rankings. Mayor Wang answered calmly. He said that compared to virtual combat, the district leadership believed real combat was more effective. He explained that warriors would be present to ensure safety. During the matches, everyone would wear specially made suits and fight at the same life strength level. Chengdu thought calmly to himself. With his current martial skill level, he was at least within the top 20 of the Purple Cloud District. With his daily rate of improvement, reaching the top 3 should not be a problem. He lowered his gaze, his expression steady. Even if he did not make the top 10, this competition would still allow him to understand the true level of his peers. There was no need to put too much pressure on himself. Across the table, the mayor smiled gently and advised him not to overthink it. After a brief pause, Chengdu raised his hand and spoke clearly. He said that he would participate. Beside him, Mo Leite smiled and added that he would participate as well. The mayor laughed in satisfaction and praised them, saying that true heroes always emerged from the youth. He then informed them that they would be notified in advance once the departure time was confirmed and told them they could return to class. Later, as Chengdu walked out of the room, his thoughts turned heavy. If he could place in the top 3 of the 100 cities battle, his parents would no longer have to work themselves to exhaustion every single day. He clenched his hands slightly. He knew what he had to do. Chengdu resolved to secure a top 3 spot in the 100 cities battle. After that, Chengdu pushed open the classroom door and stepped inside. He paused for a moment and looked around. Usually classroom desks were labeled with students' names, but the Hongji class desks had no names at all. He hesitated briefly, then decided to sit anywhere for now. As soon as he pulled out a chair, a harsh voice rang out, telling him to get lost. A large hand slammed down near him. The voice demanded to know who he was and how he dared to sit there. Chengdu turned his head. Standing beside him was a huge, burly student. He was Peng Hu, ranked 10th in the Hongji class. His towering build made him look like a bear standing inside the classroom. Peng Hu leaned closer, looking down at Chengdu with a mocking smile. Chengdu met his gaze calmly and spoke, asking what era this was, and whether people were still trying to bully others at school. The atmosphere tightened instantly. Before Peng Hu could respond, someone stepped in between them. A hand landed gently on Chengdu's shoulder. Mo Leite spoke calmly, telling Peng Hu that Chengdu was here for the first time and did not yet understand the Hongji class rules. Chengdu felt his heart tighten. Mo Leite had approached him silently. That alone made Chengdu realize something was wrong. In his mind, he judged that the man's life strength must be at least 2 levels higher than his own. Peng Hu snorted coldly and waved his hand. He said that Chengdu was lucky. For Mo Leite's sake, he would let this matter go. Then Mo Leite spoke again, explaining the rules. He said that since this was Chengdu's first time in the Hongji class, he probably did not know that strength and status here were determined by seat numbers. He explained that every month, the Hongji class held a seat ranking battle using real combat. The results decided everyone's ranking. The bottom 10 students would be forced to stand during class for the entire following month. Chengdu listened quietly. He felt surprised. He had not expected the competitive pressure in the Hongji class to be this intense. Mo Leite added another detail. He said that since it was the beginning of the month, this month's seat rankings had already been arranged. He then pointed forward and told Chengdu that in a moment he would compete for his seat number through a challenge format. Chengdu raised his eyes slightly and asked calmly whether, aside from being able to sit during class, there were any other differences in treatment based on seat number rankings. He explained that this mattered because it determined how much strength he should use. The answer came quickly. The higher the seat ranking, the better. The reason was simple. Seat rankings decided the amount of resources allocated to each student every month. Hearing this, Chengdu's eyes lit up. He said that this was definitely worth trying for. Resources were involved, so he needed to aim for the highest possible seat number. His resolve hardened. Just then, another voice interrupted. Class had already started, and everyone was told to head straight to the combat room next door. The students gathered inside the combat room, standing neatly in rows as the space opened before them. The instructor explained the rules. A challenger could issue up to 3 challenges. Based on their combat performance, a corresponding seat number would be assigned. Chengdu listened quietly. Without hesitation, he stepped forward and raised his hand. He announced clearly that he was challenging seat number 10. The moment the words left his mouth, the atmosphere shifted. His eyes widened, and a bead of sweat slid down his face. Around them, murmurs broke out. Students stared in disbelief. Someone exclaimed that Chengdu was challenging a top 10 position right from the start. Another whispered that he looked honest and simple, yet his actions were unexpectedly bold. Doubts followed just as quickly. Some students reasoned that even if Chengdu's martial skill level was outstanding, his life strength was far lower than others in the Hongji class. They believed that alone was not enough to challenge the top 10. Chengdu recalled the rule clearly. The resource allocation for 10th place was 50% higher than that of 11th place. That difference alone made it worth trying. He tightened his grip on the sword. His gaze sharpened, calm and resolute. Across from him, the student ranked 10th laughed loudly. He mocked Chengdu, saying that he had just arrived in the Hongji class, yet already had such an attitude. He warned him not to end up crying after getting beaten. Chengdu looked at him and asked simply if he was the one ranked 10th. The burly student grinned and answered confidently that he was. He leaned forward, his expression full of arrogance, and told Chengdu that he was out of luck. The instructor called out loudly, telling Peng Hu to put on his protective gear and enter the arena. From the side, someone observed Chengdu quietly. He thought that Chengdu seemed to have a steady personality, yet he was surprisingly eager to prove himself. Still, he decided that this was fine. Letting him experience some hardship could also count as training. Peng Hu stepped forward, gripping his heavy hammer with both hands. His thick body radiated pressure as he stood firmly in place. Chengdu faced him from a distance, sword held calmly in his hand. The atmosphere in the combat room turned heavy. Chengdu's expression remained composed. His eyes were sharp and focused, showing no fear. A loud voice echoed through the room. The match began. Pang Hu grinned viciously and shouted at Chengdu, asking if he was ready. He told him to prepare to cling to his leg and beg for mercy. Chengdu stood calmly, a faint smile appearing on his face. He replied quietly that they would see about that. In the next instant, Pang Hu moved first. He swung his massive hammer forward with terrifying force, but Chengdu remained composed. A faint aura flowed around him as he stepped forward without panic. Pang Hu sneered and shouted that Chengdu was too slow. The heavy hammer descended toward him with overwhelming momentum. From the sidelines, students watched in shock. They exclaimed that, with such a speed difference, Chengdu's life strength level was a full rank lower than Pang Hu's. Some immediately concluded that Chengdu was finished and would lose in the next round. They said that even a 0.1 level gap in life strength could affect the outcome of a battle, let alone a full level difference. To them, Chengdu's defeat already seemed certain. The instructor, watching from the side, suddenly narrowed his eyes. He muttered in shock that Chengdu's life strength had reached level 5.2. Just yesterday, it had only been 5.1. He could not understand how Chengdu had raised it to 5.2 in a single day. Meanwhile, Pang Hu laughed loudly, convinced of his victory. He shouted that Chengdu had already lost. His heavy hammer slammed down with crushing force. But in the next instant, Pang Hu's expression froze. He stared forward in disbelief, unable to understand what had happened. Shock spread across his face as sweat formed on his forehead. Chengdu had moved. In a single smooth motion, Chengdu lowered his body and shifted his stance. His sword rose with perfect precision. A flash of blue light burst upward. Before Pang Hu could react, Chengdu's blade surged from below like a rising tide, carrying immense power. The force of the strike exploded upward, lifting Pang Hu's massive body into the air. Pang Hu's eyes widened as his body was launched skyward. He could only let out a stunned sound, unable to comprehend how the situation had reversed so suddenly. Pang Hu's massive body was sent flying into the air. He could only shout in disbelief as he was thrown upward, completely unable to resist the force of Chengdu's strike. From below, dozens of students stared up in shock as his heavy body soared across the combat room. A moment later, Pang Hu crashed down onto the ground with a loud impact. The floor shook slightly as dust and shockwaves spread outward. The surrounding students widened their eyes, stunned by what they had just witnessed. No one expected the battle to end this quickly. Chengdu stood calmly in place, his sword still in hand. From the side, the instructor suddenly noticed the technique he had used. He stared at Chengdu's weapon and asked in disbelief if that was the Azure Dragon Thrust. He said that Chengdu's martial skill had already reached first-order perfection. Chengdu responded calmly. He said that he had simply broken through last night. Hearing this, the others were even more stunned. Reaching 90% mastery in a single night was something they could hardly believe. To them, it sounded completely insane. At that moment, the instructor's voice echoed across the combat room, announcing the result of the match. The winner was Chengdu. Chengdu relaxed slightly and lowered his sword, his expression returning to its usual calm as the outcome became official. The students around the arena erupted in shock. They stared at Chengdu and exclaimed that he had actually won despite a full-level difference. Some could not believe their eyes. Others shouted that it was incredible. He had taken the victory with just a single strike. Among the crowd, Mo Laita muttered that Chengdu truly was a late-blooming genius. The instructor stepped forward and announced that Chengdu had earned seat number 10. He asked if Chengdu wanted to continue challenging for a higher rank. Chengdu shook his head calmly and refused. He explained that even if he moved up a few more spots, the difference in resources would not be significant. It would be better to conserve his strength. The surrounding students immediately surrounded him. One of them smiled and took out his phone, asking to add Chengdu on WeChat, since they were classmates and should stay in touch. Others quickly joined in, asking to be added as well. Chengdu looked slightly awkward under the sudden attention, but still agreed politely. At that moment, Pang Hu slowly got back on his feet. His earlier arrogance was completely gone. He looked up at Chengdu nervously and called him Big Brother, asking him not to hold a grudge and to forget what he had said earlier. Chengdu looked at him calmly and thought to himself that Pang Hu really knew how to bend with the wind. After the match ended, Chengdu stood quietly among the students. Just then, a voice called out to him. The instructor told him to come to the office after class. Chengdu turned his head in surprise, wondering what it was about. Later, he knocked on the office door. A calm voice from inside told him to come in. Chen Du entered and saw the principal sitting behind a desk, writing something on a document. The atmosphere inside the office was quiet and formal. Meanwhile, Chen Du's instructor asked the principal whether there were any special recruitment slots left for Mount Everest Martial Arts University and Mount Tai Martial Arts University in their ecological zone. The principal, confused, asked the instructor to sit first and then questioned why he was asking about this. The instructor told the principal that he wanted to try and see if Chen Du could qualify through special recruitment. Upon hearing this, the principal's expression turned thoughtful. He explained that both Mount Everest Martial Arts University and Mount Tai Martial Arts University were ranked among the 8 great schools. Their minimum requirement for students was martial skill at first-order perfection. He continued, saying that Chen Du was only 1% away from reaching that level. However, that final 1% was an extremely difficult barrier to break. Instructor Ling Yun spoke impatiently and told the principal that there was no need for more discussion. He reminded him that there was a device in the office used for testing students' martial skill proficiency, and suggested letting Chen Du try it. The principal sighed and replied that Ling Yun always overthought things. Still, he agreed and pointed toward the corner of the office, saying the testing device was over there. He explained that its maximum reading was first-order advanced, which made it perfect for evaluating students. Ling Yun immediately grabbed Chen Du by the shoulder and led him toward the machine. He instructed Chen Du to reproduce the same attack he had used during the seat battle and strike the proper spot on the device. Chen Du nodded calmly and stepped forward. His expression turned serious as he stood before the testing machine. He slowly raised his sword. A quiet stillness filled the room as he gathered his strength. In the next instant, he moved. With a sharp motion, Chen Du unleashed his technique. Azure Dragon Thrust erupted forward in a brilliant surge of blue light, crashing toward the testing device with overwhelming force. A loud cracking sound echoed through the office. The testing device shattered under the impact of Chen Du's strike. Fragments scattered across the floor as the machine smoked and collapsed. The principal froze in shock, staring at the broken device. He exclaimed in disbelief, unable to process what had just happened. Nearby, Instructor Ling Yun spoke with equal surprise. He said he had not expected this either. Just yesterday afternoon, Chen Du had still been at the advanced stage. Yet by last night, he had already broken through. Now, he had reached first-order perfection. Chen Du stood awkwardly beside the ruined machine, scratching the back of his head nervously. He apologized to the principal. He said he had not expected the device to break. Ling Yun, however, showed no concern for the machine. Instead, his expression turned excited and intense. He declared that Chen Du was absolutely a fighting genius. That instinct to win was extraordinary. He continued passionately, saying that in all his years of teaching, this was the first time he had met a student whose combat sense felt so seasoned. It was as if Chen Du had survived countless life-and-death battles. His instincts were incredibly sharp. Chen Du stood there quietly, his face slightly flushed as he held his sword. The principal fell into deep thought, one hand on his chin. After a moment, he spoke decisively. He declared that Chen Du was a true martial arts genius and must be prioritized for training. Temporarily, he ordered that Chen Du be given the same resources as seat number 1. He then added that he would personally handle communication regarding Chen Du's special recruitment. As for the 100 Cities tournament, he told Chen Du to make sure he fought for a top 3 spot. If he achieved that, everything else would be practically guaranteed. Chen Du raised his hand slightly and asked what special recruitment actually meant. Ling Yun explained calmly that to enter one of the 8 great schools through the normal college exam, a student's life strength had to reach at least level 6.5. With Chen Du's current life strength, reaching that level before the exam would be extremely difficult. However, through special recruitment, the requirement was different. Chen Du would only need his martial skill to reach first-order perfection 1 month before the exam. After the 100 Cities tournament, professors from Mount Everest Martial Arts University and Mount Tai Martial Arts University would personally come to assess him. If he performed well, he could be directly recruited. Chen Du listened carefully, and then asked another question. He wondered if, after passing those schools' special recruitment, he would still be able to take the regular exam and apply elsewhere. Ling Yun looked at him with curiosity and asked if he already had a particular martial arts university in mind. Chen Du answered honestly. If possible, he said he would like to attend Huangshan Martial Arts University. However, Instructor Ling Yun was confused and asked Chen Du why he wanted to attend Huangshan Martial Arts University. Since all 8 great schools offered similar resources, Chen Du explained that 6 years ago, In Yunlei district of Hushi City, a sudden disaster had struck. Giants ambushed the city without warning. Even though Hushi's defense corps and soldiers from nearby cities rushed in to help, their numbers were limited. Despite their efforts, tens of thousands of people still lost their lives in the chaos. The memory of that tragedy remained vivid. Chengdu quietly revealed his reason. He said he simply wanted his family to live safely. His eyes hardened with determination as he continued. If Liang City ever faced danger, he wanted to be able to rush back immediately and protect them. Ling Yun looked at him silently, understanding the weight behind those words. He remarked that such a reason was usually held by people who had lost everything before. Then he spoke with a hint of respect. To possess such resolve at such a young age, while still having a complete family, meant that Chengdu was someone capable of bearing great responsibility. Chengdu raised his hand and spoke calmly. He said he would treat the two schools as a backup. If he couldn't get into Mount Huang Martial Arts University, he asked if he could choose those two instead. The principal sat behind his desk and replied firmly. He explained that once Chengdu passed the early special admission, he would have to sign a contract tying him to the school. Later, Teacher Ling told Chengdu the situation clearly. If Chengdu earned a ranking in the 100 Cities Hegemony Tournament next month, admission to the two schools would be almost guaranteed. With early special admission, the score requirement could be lowered by another 100 points. He also warned Chengdu about the alternative. If he didn't take the early special admission route, his life intensity would need to reach 6.5, and the exam score reduction would only be at most 30 points. He advised Chengdu not to take risks with his future. Chengdu smiled lightly and thanked both the teacher and the principal. He said he would think about it carefully. Then, outside the school gate, Chengdu walked alone among the passing students. He thought about the timeline. Early special admission would only begin after the 100 Cities tournament, still more than a month away. As he crossed the street, he planned ahead. From that day onward until the college entrance exam, he would stay in the exclusive martial arts room the school had provided and focus completely on raising his strength. He also considered another possibility. During this time, he wanted to try using medicine to speed up the improvement of his life intensity. What he needed should be available. After all, it belonged to the Technology Martial Palace. Walking under the open sky, Chengdu looked ahead with determination. In his mind, he recalled the structure of their world. There were 3 pinnacle forces in the entire high martial civilization. These major organizations worked together to protect humanity's future and hope. The first organization confronted alien civilizations. It was known as the Extreme Martial Palace. The second force was responsible for improving humanity's overall strength and was called the Technology Martial Palace. The third group was responsible for maintaining human public order. It was known as the Martial Artist Alliance. Then there was the founder of the Technology Martial Palace, Durags, recognized as the second strongest person in their civilization. Chengdu knew that although his strength did not surpass Yan, no one could deny the enormous contribution he made to humanity's progress. Later, Chengdu walked into a shop with a spacious hall. A woman in a blue dress noticed him and greeted him warmly, saying she was happy to serve him. Chengdu stopped in front of her and spoke politely. He said he wanted to buy 3 boxes of Thunder Chi blood pills. The woman looked surprised. Her eyes widened as she repeated his request in shock. She explained to Chengdu that this medicine could not be purchased directly. She told him that an endurance test was required and asked him to follow her. Chengdu was surprised to hear that and followed her. She explained to him that the Thunder Chi blood pill was considered one of the best Chi blood medicines that ordinary people could buy before becoming martial artists. However, it carried risks. Once taken, the pill's medicinal power would turn into thunder and rush through the body's meridians. She added that if the user could not maintain strong mental concentration within 30 minutes, the thunder inside the body would become chaotic and uncontrollable, possibly putting the user in danger. Then they entered a room filled with testing machines. The girl gestured toward the equipment and invited Chengdu inside. She continued explaining that because of these risks, an endurance test was required before anyone could buy such medicine. She then turned to Chengdu again and told him that if there were no other questions, she would press the start button now. Chengdu placed his hand on the testing device and said he was ready. The girl stepped aside and went toward the machine, but as she read the result on the screen, she got confused. She noticed something unusual. Then, after giving Chengdu the pills, she quickly stepped aside and picked up her phone. She nervously reported to the technical department that the test machine for the Thunder Chi blood pills seemed to be broken. Meanwhile, Chengdu walked out calmly, as if nothing unusual had happened. Later, Chengdu returned to his exclusive martial arts room at school. He sat on the floor with his bag beside him. He first checked the instructions. 1 pill per day for 10 days, made 1 cycle. Taking up to 3 pills at once was allowed, but doing so increased the pain to 5 times that of a single pill. Regardless of taking 1 or 3 pills, the effect lasted for 30 minutes. After 3 to 5 cycles, antibodies would appear, and the medicine would weaken. Chengdu studied the pills in his hand. He noted that the endurance test he took earlier only had the pain level of half a pill. To him, it was incredibly easy. He evaluated the situation calmly. If he swallowed 3 pills together, the pain would be 10 times greater than the store's test. He believed it should still be manageable. Without hesitation, Chengdu opened his mouth wide and tossed all 3 pills in at once. The next second, a sudden shock hit him. His eyes widened as the pain surged through his body. Lightning burst out instantly. Chengdu's entire body arched backward as electricity exploded around him. Blue lightning wrapped around every inch of him, crackling violently across the room. His muscles tightened, and he grit his teeth, enduring the overwhelming surge as power roared through his meridians. The thunderstorm of energy filled the room in a blinding flash. A few minutes later, electricity still crackled around Chengdu's body. Even with sweat running down his face, he lifted his head and grinned wildly. He asked with a shaky smile, "Is that it?" Then, a few more minutes later, the lightning finally faded. Exhausted, Chengdu slumped forward, breathing heavily. His clothes clung to him with sweat as he let out a long breath. A blue system window appeared before him. The notification stated that his life intensity had increased from 5.2 to 5.3. Seeing that, Chengdu's eyes lit up. He clenched his fist in excitement and said that he was now 1 step closer to reaching level 6.5. As long as his life intensity improvement could speed up, he was determined to refuse early special admission. He looked at the remaining pills inside the open box beside him. He muttered to himself that he had originally planned to take the medicine for an entire month, but now it seemed he could only continue for 10 days. Based on the balance on his card, he calculated that his funds would only last 55 days. Sitting on the training room floor, Chengdu leaned back against the wall. He spoke to himself that if this was the situation, then he had no choice. He needed to fight his way into the top 2 of the 100 Cities Hegemony tournament. That was the only way to get the money he needed to continue improving. But while he was thinking all that, suddenly he fell to the floor, his body still trembling from the earlier surge of thunder power. He struggled to move and realized the side effects were stronger than he expected. He thought to himself that his body was temporarily unable to move because of the ravaging thunder energy inside him. Since his body was exhausted, he shifted his focus. He decided to improve his mental power instead. With determination, he closed his eyes and said inwardly that he was heading into the crystal space. The next morning, Chengdu finally woke up and sat upright again. His expression was calm and focused. He recalled what had happened inside the crystal space. He had spent the entire night slaughtering green firefly giants. Although he hadn't defeated them fully yet, he could feel his mental power improving greatly. He remembered the time he spent on the crystal space battlefield, how he charged forward, leaping high into the air, and how he swung his blade, releasing a bright blue arc of energy as he attacked the creature. Remembering that, a small smile appeared on his face. He had just received information about the school's resource subsidy. Knowing that the support had arrived, he felt excited and said he couldn't wait to go to class. He then went to his classroom. There, a teacher with red hair and glasses stood at the front. She was Ya Dai, the mental power teacher of the Hongji class and a member of the Martial Artist Alliance. She introduced the lesson for the day. She told the students they would be learning in advance about a combat method for martial artists, mental power attachment. Chen, seated in the front, thought that the mental power course was exclusive to the Hongji class. Only students with Tier 2 mental power were allowed to learn it. He saw that the teacher leading the course had a life intensity above 15, an impressive level. The red-haired teacher continued her explanation. She said that the higher one's martial arts skill level, the greater the development of physical strength. But if mental power was mastered properly, it could produce twice the result with half the effort. She went on, explaining that physical strength generated by martial arts dispersed throughout the body. In contrast, mental power could gather all excess strength into a single point, increasing one's explosive force. An image in the lesson showed energy concentrating into one place. The teacher said that mental power attachment was the ability to make every strand of strength in the body play its proper role. Hearing her, Chengdu looked around the classroom. He noticed that none of the students seemed surprised by the explanation. He realized that it seemed they had probably already learned and mastered mental power attachment in advance. Then teacher Yadai added a warning. She told them that before mental power reached Tier 10, the physical strength it could mobilize was extremely limited. She advised students not to spend too much time researching it. For the college entrance exam, she said the main focus should still be on raising life intensity. Then she clapped her hands and made an announcement. She said that she would now test everyone's mental power, and instructed all students to stand up. As she raised her hand, a glowing flute appeared above her palm, crackling with light. She stood at the front of the classroom and addressed the students. She told them that she would use a short flute to play the Song of Exhaustion, which would reveal exactly how much mental power each of them had. She added that she hoped everyone's results would be better than last semester. The students stood beside their desks as she walked forward, holding the flute in her hand. Then she looked toward Chengdu and spoke directly to him. She said that he could choose whether to participate or not. Since the test did not affect his college entrance exam score, Chengdu turned toward her with a confused expression. He thought to himself that the teacher probably assumed he would collapse the moment the flute played because he only had Tier 1 mental power. She must have been worried he would embarrass himself. With a determined look, Chengdu straightened his posture and answered firmly, telling the teacher that he would participate. The teacher smiled lightly and agreed. She thought to herself that young people were always too competitive. Mental power was not something simple to control, and even the other students in the Hongji class struggled with it. She decided to let him try anyway. Since teacher Ling Yun took special interest in him, she planned to keep Chengdu behind after he inevitably failed so she could counsel him privately. She lifted the flute to her lips and announced that the students should focus their attention and resist with all their strength. Her song of exhaustion would make both their bodies and minds feel drained at the same time. Chengdu stood with a determined expression, ready to face whatever would come next. All the students responded confidently, shouting that they were ready. The teacher lifted her flute and began to play. A wave of glowing purple energy burst out, swirling around her as musical notes formed in the air. The song of exhaustion filled the room, wrapping her entire body in a shimmering purple aura. Chengdu stood among the students as the energy spread toward him. He looked up at the purple light with a surprised expression, watching it approach. In his mind, a strange figure appeared in front of him, a dark humanoid shape wrapped in the same purple aura. The creature turned its head toward Chengdu. Chengdu stared at the figure in confusion, wondering what this was. But the next second, Chengdu's eyes widened as the humanoid charged, cutting through the illusion with a clean strike. The monster kicked Chengdu with a powerful blow, but Chengdu blocked its attack with his hand. Purple energy spread all around. Chengdu was shocked to see that the humanoid figure could move. He realized that it was a spiritual-style physical hypnosis. He tightened his fist with a confident smile, ready to counter whatever came next. The teacher lowered her flute slightly. As she stared at Chengdu, she was shocked to see that Chengdu stood calmly in front of her, unfazed by the purple spiritual pressure still filling the room. She watched him closely and noted that Chengdu was actually holding up. He wasn't frowning or struggling. Instead, he looked completely relaxed, as if he were just eating or drinking. Chengdu had closed his eyes, standing still in the swirling purple mist, his breathing steady and calm. The teacher pressed the flute back to her lips and admitted to herself that his spiritual power was far more resilient than she had expected. She wondered how far Chengdu could go. A spark lit up in her eyes as she decided to raise the spiritual pressure by one more level. Purple energy burst out around her again as she played with more intensity. Around the classroom, many students began collapsing. Some trembled, their legs too weak to support them. Others fell to the ground, exhausted and unable to hold on any longer. Voices echoed. They complained they couldn't stand, they felt too tired, and they couldn't keep going. The teacher watched them fall and nodded to herself. It was just as she expected. Most people could not withstand the song of exhaustion at this level. The teacher narrowed her eyes, directing her gaze at Chengdu, wondering about him. But she was shocked when she saw Chengdu still standing without much reaction. The purple spiritual aura twisted behind Chengdu as he continued to stand firmly in place. Students nearby stared in disbelief. One of them cried out that Chengdu was still holding on. They were all shocked because they knew how poor his family was, and that they could never afford spiritual resources. They wondered if he actually possessed spiritual power talent. The teacher was the most shocked because she knew that martial talent and spiritual power talent were entirely different gifts, yet Chengdu seemed to have both. It was the first time she had seen someone possess that combination. Peng Hu, who had collapsed early, looked up with a relieved grin. He laughed to himself, feeling proud because the stronger Chen Du appeared. The more it proved that his own defeat yesterday wasn't because he was weak. Suddenly, a sharp cracking sound rang out. Students turned toward it with wide eyes, startled by the sudden shift in pressure. The sound was Mo Lai-te, finally falling to the ground under the pressure of the Song of Exhaustion. He lay on the floor, drenched in sweat. Everyone watched him in disbelief. They knew that he not only had martial talent, but also spiritual power talent. With a different background, he could compete for entrance into the 3 great elite academies. The teacher stared at Mo Lai-te with wide eyes. She saw that Mo Lai-te, the top student in the class, had collapsed at level 6. Yet Chen Du had endured level 7 without falling. Shocked, she decided to increase the pressure. She brought the flute to her lips again, preparing to unleash level 8 spiritual power. Chen Du's body trembled as the next wave hit him. He let out a strained breath, barely staying upright as the spiritual pressure flooded the room. In his mind, the humanoid figure he was fighting turned into a towering spiritual figure, massive and muscular, glowing with violent purple energy. It loomed over Chen Du, its aura shaking the ground. The giant figure swung its fist, sending a huge impact crashing toward Chen Du. Chen Du crossed his arms to block, but the force still threw him backward in a burst of light and shockwaves. He gritted his teeth as the weight pressed down on him. He was shocked to see how heavy that punch was. Chen Du looked up, sweat beading on his face. His eyes widened as he realized the next attack was already coming, faster and heavier than before. Chen Du dropped to one knee, breathing heavily as the pressure faded. A rough exhale escaped his lips. The spiritual duel had drained him, and he realized the battle didn't just wear down the spirit, the body suffered too. The teacher stared at him in disbelief. In her mind, she repeated what she had just witnessed. Having spiritual power greater than one's life strength was almost unheard of. To her, it looked like a miracle. And Chen Du not only had unusually strong spiritual power, but his martial skill talent was extremely high as well. She imagined the path he could take. Someone who could become immune to spiritual attacks and rely on a powerful body to tear enemies apart. Her expression tensed as she reached a conclusion. Chen Du was practically the perfect warrior for battling the Big Eye civilization. Then, sometime later, in the principal's office, the principal was shocked to find that Chen Du had dual talent in martial skills and spiritual power. Inside the office, teacher Ya Dian nodded firmly. She confirmed that she had personally verified everything during class. The shocked principal leaned back in his chair with wild hair flowing around him. Teacher Ling said he had just finished talking with Chen Du about his situation. From his perspective, Chen Du had the potential to reach level 20, a skywalking warrior. Hearing that, Teacher Ya Dai was shocked and asked Teacher Ling if he meant a real skywalking warrior, someone who could actually fly. The principal leaned forward with a serious expression. He explained that skywalking warriors were extremely rare, only 1 in 10,000. A genius like Chen Du, he said, would be completely wasted in the 8 great schools. He said that Chen Du should aim for one of the 3 great elite martial academies, the kind that didn't take normal exam students and only accepted those capable of becoming skywalking warriors. The principal then told them that he had already received confirmation news that after the 100 Cities tournament, Black Dragon Martial Arts University, one of the 3 elite academies, would hold its freshman selection in Cyber City. He gave Teacher Ling an explicit order to persuade Chen Du to participate. Teacher Ling raised his hand sharply in response, replying with confidence that he understood. Later, at the school office, Chen Du walked inside and asked the teacher why he was being called. Inside, Teacher Ling sat at the desk and began the conversation. He asked Chen Du if he knew about Black Dragon University. Chen Du nodded. He said he had heard of them, that they were one of the 3 great elite schools, but he didn't know much beyond that. Teacher Ling explained to Chen Du that the elite schools didn't recruit through normal exams. They only chose geniuses who had the potential to break through to the level of skywalking warrior. He clarified that warriors at this level were considered skywalking warriors, standing at a transcendent status above normal fighters. To reach that level, he explained, one needed a life strength rating of 9.9 and martial skills at the first order intermediate stage. Then, with a serious tone, Teacher Ling told Chen Du that among high school warriors and above, only half ever reached the intermediate stage in martial skills. Life strength could be raised using blood-enhancing medicine, but most people simply couldn't afford something so expensive. He added that many students couldn't even buy basic blood supplements. By the time they earned money later in life, their best training period had already slipped away. He asked Chengdu if he had ever thought about this. Chengdu remained silent, his expression unreadable. After a moment he finally spoke. He told Teacher Ling that he would try for Black Dragon Martial Arts University's selection, but he also admitted something heavy. If possible, he didn't want to leave his family. Taking this path was a gamble. If he left, the separation might be forever. Teacher Ling nodded firmly. He encouraged Chengdu to work hard. With his current condition, if he chose the special recruitment route, he was almost guaranteed a place in the 8 great schools. Teacher Ling told him that he could treat those schools as backups while aiming for Black Dragon Martial Arts University, because his future could be far greater. Hearing all that, Chengdu lowered his gaze. He thought that there was still 1 month before the 100 Cities tournament. He should focus on that first. Everything else could wait until the results were out. The scene then shifted to Chengdu's home. As he returned, a voice called out from inside, telling Chengdu that breakfast was ready and he should come eat. Chengdu stepped into his home with his backpack on, answering his mother's call for breakfast. When he saw the plate being handed out, he quickly responded, saying he was coming. At the table, his younger sister paused while eating and glanced toward him. She quietly wondered why her brother felt so different lately. She thought about it more as she watched him. To her, he now seemed fitter, more handsome, and even more mysterious than before. Chengdu sat down and spoke to his family. He told his dad, mom, and sister that starting today, he planned to live at school. He wanted to focus completely on training so he could prepare for the 100 Cities tournament happening in 1 month. His mother looked worried and asked if he would be able to rest properly. She reminded him that working hard was good, but he needed to take care of his body too. She feared he might collapse again. His sister added another concern. She asked whether the school could still assign him a dorm room, since housing was usually arranged before the school year began. Chengdu smiled reassuringly. He told his mother not to worry. The school had given him many resources, and he wouldn't face the same problems as before. Chengdu explained calmly to his family that every Hongji class student received a personal martial arts chamber with its own resting area. He told them he would train and rest there without any problems. Hearing that, his father nodded with approval. He said it was fine, and encouraged Chengdu to keep his drive and work hard. If Chengdu ever needed anything, he should tell his parents. His father raised a fist proudly, and told him to charge ahead. Chengdu responded with a firm yeah, then stood up from the table. He said he was done eating, and was heading to school. His family immediately began to cheer him on. His mother told him to take care of himself. His father called him a good kid, and urged him to work hard. His sister grinned excitedly and shouted for him to come back with first place. Chengdu listened to their voices of support as he walked away, carrying their expectations with him. The morning mist hung over the school grounds as Chengdu arrived. The sports field and the tall school building slowly came into view through the fog. Inside the martial building, he walked briskly with his bag on his back. A list of supplies ran through his mind. 90 bags of blood-boosting milk, 30 blood-boosting pills, and 4 packs of perfect blood powder. He noted that all the resources the school provided had already been sent to his personal martial chamber. Altogether, it was worth at least 50,000. He realized martial arts truly was a sport for the rich. He pressed his fist onto a glowing device panel, activating the chamber. He told himself that from now on, aside from class, he would focus entirely on training. The chamber door opened with a metallic sound. He stepped inside, standing straight with determination, tightening his fist. Facing the training dummy in the dim room, Chengdu held his sword and gave a command. He told Little Bear to raise the gravity to 5 times. The mechanical voice obeyed. A wave of blue energy surged around him as the gravity increased. His expression hardened while sweat formed at his temples. He gripped his sword and steadied his stance. He compared the pressure to having 15 adult elephants pressing down on him while he battled a training machine. Despite the weight, a spark of excitement flashed in his eyes. The 4th training round began as the combat dummy activated, its eyes glowing red. Chengdu lowered his stance with his sword raised, facing the towering machine under heavy gravity. He rushed in with a strike. In the high-gravity environment, he knew any mistake could tear muscles or even break bones, so he reminded himself not to meet the attack head-on. As the dummy swung toward him, he changed direction and adjusted his attack path. The force of the counter-strike sent him rolling across the ground, narrowly avoiding the red trajectory. The dummy analyzed his movement. It reported that his evasion efficiency was at 87%, but his energy consumption was too high. It recommended that he reduce unnecessary movement. The next moment, the dummy attacked again, striking from above and below at the same time. Chengdu realized it was blocking all normal escape routes. Instead of retreating, a determined smile appeared on his face. He told himself that if he couldn't dodge, then he would make the dummy experience increased gravity as well. Chengdu pushed off the ground with full strength, his foot slamming against the floor as he launched himself upward. The training dummy swung its long arms down at him, but he met the attack head-on, raising his sword to intercept. The two forces collided in mid-air under heavy gravity, sending fragments of energy scattering around them. A sharp impact followed. The dummy staggered back with smoke rising from its body, while Chengdu landed lightly on one foot, steadying himself. The damaged dummy's eyes glowed even brighter. It activated an emergency mode and announced its last resort. Power surged around it in a violent burst. The dummy suddenly stretched its limbs to an impossible length, attacking from all directions at once. Chengdu stared in disbelief as it lunged at him with full force. He shouted in frustration, stunned that the machine could cheat like that. Before he could react further, everything blurred as the dummy's full-speed assault swept through the chamber. The training dummy wrapped its limbs tightly around Chengdu, holding him in a strange grapple. Chengdu let out a tired breath and told Little Bear to end the gravity mode. He added that it was enough, and that the dummy could let him go now. But the dummy continued to repeat its command phrase, last resort, as if stuck on its final setting. When it finally released him, Chengdu sat down cross-legged. He felt his body reaching its limit. He said he would use the Void Immortal Visualization method next to raise his spiritual power and let his body recover. As he closed his eyes, his consciousness sank into a different space. His shadow stretched downward like a black river, while strange red symbols floated around him. A massive red figure hovered far above, watching silently. Chengdu steadied himself in the void, blue energy swirling around him. He encouraged his spiritual power to grow, calling for more experience. A moment later, he opened his eyes again. He learned that his spiritual power had increased by 0.3 levels. But just as he tried to stand up, he grimaced, realizing that his legs were completely numb. Chengdu then ate a pill and admitted to himself that his mind was exhausted and his body still hadn't fully recovered. Since that was the case, he decided he would sleep. He lay down flat on the ground with his arms spread out, letting his body relax completely. As his eyes slowly closed, he slipped into a calm state. In that quiet moment, he told himself it was time to enter the crystal space and sharpen his martial skills. When he opened his eyes again inside the crystal space, huge crystal pillars surrounded him. He gripped his sword tightly and stood ready. His footsteps echoed on the ground as he stepped forward. In front of him, several green fire giants appeared. Their massive shapes loomed in the mist. He remembered that last time, he couldn't figure out how to deal with them, and didn't manage to kill even one. Now he stood firm with his sword in hand. This time, he wanted to see what he could do. Chengdu stood with his sword resting on his shoulder. Blue spiritual energy swirled behind him, making the air shimmer as he faced the giants with calm eyes. His attack struck one of the giants, and as the blow landed, he realized something important. The green patches on their bodies weren't curses or birthmarks at all. They were sources of healing energy. Understanding this, he moved quickly. He landed on a giant's shoulder and struck directly at one of the green patches, causing the giant to roar in pain. He continued analyzing their abilities. Other than the healing spots, the green fire giants only had thick health bars and nothing else. As long as he destroyed the green patches first, they weren't scary at all. He rushed forward with renewed confidence. After the intense gravity training earlier, he felt like his control over his body had improved dramatically now that he was back in normal conditions. His body flipped in midair as he swung his sword downward, aiming straight for another weak point. He saw an opening and tightened his grip. This was his chance. He brought his blade down with full force, cutting through the giant's defenses as red energy burst from the impact. Chengdu's strike landed with overwhelming force. One of the giants was blasted backward, its arms flailing as it collapsed under the impact. Flashes of light rained down behind him as more giants gathered, their red eyes glowing in the darkness. Chengdu stood calmly in front of them, his sword held at his side while blue flames of energy flowed around his body. He felt light, almost springy. The sensation excited him. He thought that once he woke up from this training space, he would continue his gravity training immediately. He dashed forward with full momentum. He believed that if he kept improving step by step like this, he would definitely have a chance to place in the top 3 of the 100 Cities tournament. Then the next day in High City, the long-awaited day of the 100 Cities tournament had finally arrived, and the city buzzed with energy. Chengdu followed his group into a grand hotel. He looked around wide-eyed, surprised by the luxurious interior. It was his first time being in such a fancy place. The instructors told the group to stay close. While Chengdu was looking around, someone suddenly shouted at the reception, asking why they weren't letting him sign in. Hearing that, Chengdu turned around. It was a man named Wuzong, a member of the Lu City competition team. He slammed his hands on the counter and glared furiously. His expression twisted with anger as he shouted that he had clearly arrived within the required time. He demanded to know why he was being targeted, and insisted they give him an explanation. The receptionist stepped back in fright, her hands raised nervously as she faced his intimidating presence. Wuzong lowered his head slightly, his eyes narrowing with a dark, dangerous look. His hand moved toward the sword at his waist, gripping the handle tightly. Chengdu, watching, wondered anxiously if he was about to attack someone right there in the hotel. Chengdu, standing nearby, felt a sharp wave of sword intent coming from Wuzong. He stared in shock, realizing that Wuzong's martial skill level might not be lower than his own. Hearing that, Lu Bo and Mo Lei muttered in disbelief, wondering how such a vulgar man could actually be so strong. At that moment, a girl with long purple hair appeared there, observing the situation. She stepped forward with authority. Her name was Zhou Xiaogu, a member of High City's competition team. She instructed the staff to take care of Wuzong. She said they should let him sign in, but his teammates would be treated as forfeiting. While saying that, she was standing on the upper balcony. The crowd below recognized her instantly and began whispering excitedly. Many called her the Sea Princess, amazed that she looked even prettier in person than in the photos. Some people remembered online comments saying she didn't photograph well, and now they believed it. Chengdu looked confused when he heard the nickname. His teammate Mo Lei explained it clearly. Zhou Xiaogu, the Sea Princess, was the only daughter of High City No. 1 High School's principal. She had family power, money, reputation, and talent. Everything about her was top tier. She was considered a true heaven's favorite. Then he added bluntly that Chengdu didn't stand a chance. But Chengdu suddenly froze as he looked up at the girl with purple hair. A strong sense of familiarity hit him. He felt certain he had seen that face somewhere before. Then the scene from the online simulation match flashed in his mind, where he saw Zhou Xiaogu leap gracefully through the air, spinning with perfect balance, her long hair fluttering as she descended. Chengdu stared up at her, stunned and wide-eyed. His memory snapped into place. She was the sneaky player from Virtual Combat, the little girl who sold nukes. Zhou Xiaogu leaned forward slightly, unaware of his realization. Chengdu examined her face carefully, recognizing it completely. He had always assumed the system generated that appearance, but he never expected someone in real life to actually look this pretty. A small smile formed on his face. His teammate watched him curiously. Chengdu thought about the past. Back then, her martial skill had already been one step ahead of his, reaching first-order perfection. He believed she wouldn't recognize him now. Meeting an old online opponent in real life felt surreal. He wondered how strong she had become since then. Joining the 100 Cities tournament suddenly felt like the perfect decision. Later that day, the group gathered in their hotel room. The door to room 301 closed behind them. Inside, their instructor shared new information. The leaders had changed the tournament rules. Before the elimination rounds, there would be an additional event, a badge battle. Chengdu repeated the term quietly, trying to understand it. Sitting on the couch, he asked what the new tournament rule actually meant. His instructor explained the structure. The 100 Regions tournament would last 3 days with 3 different rounds. The first round would begin the next day, a badge battle held in a forest arena. Within a 13-hour time limit, every participant had to obtain 2 badges marked Gao and Wu. The instructor continued that after collecting them, teams needed to reach the finish point and check in. Whether they passed or not depended on how many of their teammates reached the end together. Hearing that, Chengdu asked how many badges existed. The instructor replied that there were 50 Gao badges and 50 Wu badges, meaning only 50 teams could advance. At least half the teams would be eliminated on the first day. He went on to explain that the second round would be a 1 versus 1 elimination bracket, with almost no rest between matches. With a serious face, the instructor added that 150 participants would have to be reduced to just 10 finalists in a single day for the third round. Opponents would be chosen at random, but teammates wouldn't be matched against each other. Hearing this, Lu Bo and Mo Lei looked relieved. Lubo muttered happily that at least he wouldn't have to fight the monster known as Chengdu. Mo Lite nodded, equally grateful that he wasn't their opponent. The instructor continued explaining the rules. He raised 3 fingers and said that the third round was the finals, also known as the top 10 battle. Reaching this stage was already considered a victory, since everyone who made it into the top 10 would receive bonus exam points and cash rewards. He added that breaking into the top 3 would depend entirely on each participant's condition. The finals meant 3 full days of non-stop combat with almost no rest. Injuries were expected along the way. He explained that the one who took first place wouldn't necessarily be the strongest in raw fighting ability, but would definitely be the one with the most complete overall strength. Before finishing, he lifted a finger and said there was one last thing. His expression darkened as he warned them about the most important rule: no killing. Whether inside the tournament or out in real life, this rule would follow them for their entire lives. Their true enemies were otherworldly civilizations, not their fellow humans. They were told to never turn their blades on their own comrades. Chengdu and the others listened silently, as he explained further. During the tournament, they would be wearing special uniforms that balanced everyone's life strength. The leaders would also enter the field to protect them from the shadows. However, he also reminded them that if he had to intervene directly, their team would be immediately disqualified. With a calm smile, he encouraged them. Tomorrow would depend entirely on their own efforts. No matter what happened, as long as they believed in themselves, doing their best would already be enough. Chengdu and his teammates answered with confidence. All 3 of them shouted yes with determined expressions. The scene shifted to High City No. 1 High School, a large campus located among tall city buildings. At the tournament grounds, rows of students gathered while an instructor stood at the front. Behind him was a massive gate, and beyond it was a lush expanse of trees. Chengdu looked at the landscape in surprise and asked if it was really a forest. Then a man stepped forward and introduced himself as Zhou Cheng, the principal of High City No. 1 High School and one of the organizers of the 100 Cities tournament. He addressed the crowd, explaining what stood before them. He pointed toward the giant gate and said that behind it was a forest created by a dimensional rift centuries ago, when the 9 major planets collided. This special place was known as a spirit realm. The area in front of them was the lowest level one, a level 1 spirit realm called the Forest of Dire Wolves. Hearing this, Chengdu was shocked. Knowing what a spirit realm truly was, an alternate world without humans and filled with monsters everywhere. The principal raised a finger and told the students not to worry. He explained that the spirit realm ahead was a very stable alternate dimension. Its safety had even been certified by the world's 3rd strongest person, Rhine, the founder of the Warrior Alliance. According to him, there was absolutely no problem, but his expression turned serious as he continued. Even with all precautions, the trial still carried a risk of death. He warned everyone to be extremely careful once inside. He then pointed at one of the students, a tall swordsman named Wu Zhang. He reminded him that showing up alone didn't mean he could act alone. They would assign teammates based on individual levels. Wu Zhang clicked his tongue in irritation. Chengdu noticed Wu Zhang's attitude and thought that the guy seemed annoyed with everyone he looked at. The principal then approached the massive gate and completed an iris scan. With a mechanical chime, the system confirmed his identity. The gates slowly opened, revealing a bright entrance filled with drifting blue particles. The students gathered outside, staring at the path ahead. The principal announced that it was time for everyone to get ready, because they were about to enter the Forest of Dire Wolves. The students gathered in a large group as a glowing magic circle lit up beneath them. The bright pattern expanded across the ground. Students looked around in surprise, asking if this place was really the Forest of Dire Wolves. The principal explained calmly. He said the true location of the spirit realm was a top-secret area. The magic circle they were standing on was a gateway to the forest, a backup plan created by their predecessors with great effort. He added that if the dimensional rift ever closed unexpectedly, they could still use this circle to pull everyone out safely. He then instructed all students to step inside the circle. In a moment, each team would be teleported to one of 1,000 possible points inside the Forest of Dire Wolves. He also reminded them that out of 300 marked badge locations on the map, only 100 held real badges, the rest were decoys. He wished everyone good luck. The circle began to glow stronger. A message appeared, announcing that activation was beginning. Light swirled around the students as the magic circle powered up. A flash burst upward like a pillar of light. Everyone was swallowed by the bright glow as the teleportation activated. The next second, Chengdu raised his hand to shield his eyes from the intense light coming from the sky. He was inside the forest of dire wolves, surrounded by tall trees and soft white light filtering through the leaves. He looked around in awe and asked if this place was really the spirit realm. Mo Laite checked their map and asked Chengdu which marker they should head toward. Chengdu studied the holographic display and smiled, saying they were lucky there was a badge located very close to their starting point. He suggested they check if it was real. His teammates agreed, and the group started moving. Not far away, a tall stone pillar stood quietly among the trees. A small symbol on it suddenly lit up when a rock was thrown at it. A badge bounced off the pillar and fell, and the square display on the stone turned bright blue with a glowing character on it. On the square, the word Ga was written, confirming that the badge was valid. Chengdu reached out and grabbed the glowing badge from the stone pillar. He told his teammates that he originally thought any marker near the starting area would probably be fake, but this one actually contained a real badge. One of his teammates, Lu Bo, laughed and said Chengdu's luck wasn't bad. He started to suggest picking another marker next, but Chengdu suddenly narrowed his eyes. A sense of danger flashed across his expression. He grabbed Lu Bo's clothes and pulled him toward himself, telling him to watch out. A split second later, sharp spears shot down from above and struck the ground right in front of them. Both Chengdu and his teammate jumped back as the attack stabbed deep into the dirt, cracking the ground. Chengdu calmly looked toward the direction of the attack. From there a voice came, saying that he didn't expect someone to arrive even faster than them. The one who said that was another team who stepped forward from the forest. One of them slammed his weapon down onto the ground with a loud impact. The group revealed themselves as the Kun City team. Their leader stared coldly at Chengdu's group and spoke arrogantly. He asked if they were the Leng City team. Then he warned them that if they didn't want to be eliminated, they should hand over their badges immediately. Chengdu quickly recognized them. He realized they were the Kun City team, a city known for having much stronger overall strength than theirs. In general, the larger the city, the stronger the students it produced. Meanwhile, far away in the High City No. 1 High School Auditorium spectator area, the audience watched the battle through the large screen. One person commented that it looked like some teams had already run into each other. Another was surprised, saying it hadn't even been 10 minutes since the students entered the spirit realm. Someone else guessed that the teams probably started very close to each other and had the same destination, which caused the encounter so quickly. Inside the auditorium, the Kun City team principal, Cao Yan, laughed loudly. He jokingly apologized to Chengdu's principal, Li Mu, saying that he would pay for the plane tickets back to Lian City for him and his students tonight. Li Mu, however, frowned as he watched the screen and wondered how they had ended up facing Cao Yan's school in the very first round. On the battlefield, Chengdu smirked calmly and looked at the opponent standing before them. With a relaxed expression, he asked if the man really believed he could eliminate them by himself. The Kun City fighter frowned and replied coldly, telling Chengdu to obediently hand over the badge instead of resisting. Chengdu's eyes sharpened as a confident smile appeared on his face. He questioned the opponent's thinking, asking if he truly believed that students from a big city were automatically stronger than those from a smaller city. At that moment, the Kun City fighter raised his spear and gathered power around his body. Purple energy surged as he leapt forward, preparing a powerful strike. He declared that Chengdu's team would become the first team eliminated in this round. As he descended with his weapon, he shouted proudly that the true strength was not the city itself, but him, Li Yuan, the man destined to become the Spear King of Kun City. With that declaration, Li Yuan launched his attack. Hearing that, Chengdu's teammates Lu Bo and Moray shouted angrily, telling Li Yuan and his teammates to come forward and try if they dared. But Chengdu remained calm. With a quiet voice, he told his teammates to leave the fight to him. He stepped forward and declared that he would handle the battle alone. Behind him, energy began to surge as the opponent prepared his technique. Li Yuan activated Comet Spear Art, third stance, boiling the loot and burning the crane. His aura flared violently as he rushed into the air, his spear glowing with powerful purple energy. Looking down at Chengdu, he mocked him, saying that Chengdu clearly did not understand the vast difference between heaven and earth. From above, multiple spear strikes shot downward toward Chengdu at incredible speed. The attacks tore through the air like falling comets, aiming straight for him, but Chengdu did not retreat. Standing firmly in place, he raised his sword and struck forward. With a loud clash, the sword collided directly with the incoming spear attack. Seeing this, the opponent's eyes widened in shock. He could not believe that Chengdu had met the attack head-on with his sword and had not fallen behind at all. Li Yuan gripped his spear tightly, as veins bulged across his hand. The power behind his attack continued to surge, but he still couldn't push back Chen Du. Li Yuan was shocked because he knew that everyone in the assessment had a life intensity of level 5, so he couldn't understand how Chen Du was so strong. On the other hand, Chen Du calmly analyzed the situation. He realized that Li Yuan's martial arts level had already reached the limit of the Tier 1 high stage. That explained why Li Yuan was so arrogant. However, Chen Du also noticed that Li Yuan's other two teammates were far weaker. At that moment, Chen Du's eyes sharpened. A powerful force awakened within him as his level 9 mental power attachment activated. Blue energy surged around his body as he gripped his sword firmly. With a sudden burst of power, Chen Du swung his blade forward. A powerful wave of energy exploded outward, sending Li Yuan's attack flying backward. Li Yuan's eyes widened in disbelief as the force pushed him away. Chen Du then unleashed his technique, flowing light sword art. First stance, painting the ground as a prison. A huge arc of blue sword energy swept across the battlefield, crashing toward Li Yuan with overwhelming force. Li Yuan groaned as the force of Chen Du's attack struck him. The powerful blow sent two of his teammates flying backward. Their bodies slammed into the ground, sliding across the stone as dust scattered into the air. Li Yuan somehow used his spear and barely survived that attack. Li Yuan gritted his teeth and stared at Chen Du in shock. He could not understand how Chen Du's sword could feel even heavier than his own spear. Sweat ran down his face as he realized the frightening truth. Chen Du's strength was far beyond what he had expected. In his mind, Li Yuan wondered just how much power this opponent truly possessed. Even so, he refused to back down. Tightening his grip on his spear, he prepared to continue fighting. From the distance, Chen Du watched calmly. His eyes sharpened as he made his decision. He decided to take down the strongest opponent first. Without hesitation, Chen Du moved. Activating his technique, he unleashed flowing light sword art. Second stance, golden drums. Chen Du moved his sword with incredible speed. But just as his blade flashed through the air to create a powerful strike, suddenly someone blocked his sword with just 2 fingers. It was Li Yarn's teacher, Lin Bei, standing in front of Chen Du. Teacher Lin Bei watched the attack and calmly commented that it was a very powerful sword strike. Seeing him, Li Yuan gritted his teeth and shouted that he could still continue fighting. However, teacher Lin Bei shook his head and stopped him. He explained that Li Yuan had already lost. The fact that Chen Du's attack had torn Li Yuan's clothes meant the strike had already reached the attack power of level 7 life intensity. Teacher Lin Bei added that even if Li Yuan had managed to block that sword strike, he would never be able to block the second one. He told Li Yuan that the fight was over, and that they should leave. Teacher Lin Bei adjusted his glasses and thought to himself that Chen Du's talent was even greater than Li Yuan's. In his mind, he concluded that this boy would definitely become a powerful figure in the future. As their fight ended, teacher Lin Bei looked toward a tree where Chen Du's teacher, Ling Yun, was standing and said that he was leaving. He told Ling Yun that he was looking forward to seeing his performance in the finals. At that moment, Li Yuan shouted toward Chen Du, asking for his name. He admitted that he rarely submitted to anyone, but this time he acknowledged Chen Du's strength. Chen Du calmly turned his head and replied with a faint smile. He said that the first place in the competition the day after tomorrow would bear his name. The scene then shifted to the High City No. 1 high school auditorium, where many spectators were watching the competition. Inside the auditorium, Chen Du's principal, Li Mu, laughed loudly and mocked the Kun City team principal Cao Yan. He sarcastically thanked him for letting them win, and joked about booking a plane ticket for him that very night. Not far away, another man spoke to old Zhou. He said he had not expected so many students this year whose martial arts had already reached Tier 1 perfect. Including the student from the Ling City team, there were already 4 of them. However, old Zhou corrected him calmly, and said that the number was not 4. According to him, it was still only 3. Just then, inside the auditorium, several spectators watched the screen with surprise. One of them suddenly asked if the Liang City team had already collected 2 badges. Another person looked confused and questioned why they were moving toward the moon mark, which represented the exit, after getting only 1 badge. He wondered if they would be eliminated immediately if they left like that. The scene then shifted to the Forest Wolf Woods. Lu Bo and Mireille were shocked as they faced Chen Du. One of them asked in surprise if Chen Du was planning to take out Wu Zhang right there. Chen Du turned his head slightly and answered calmly. He said that, to be honest, with his strength, getting 2 badges was not difficult. Both Lu Bo and Moray nodded in agreement. Chen Du then spoke again with a determined look in his eyes. He said that he wanted to win the championship. He explained that for both him and Wu Zong, first place was only about prestige. He said he didn't really care about prestige, but he truly needed the 1 million prize money to survive. Hearing that, both Lu Bo and Moray were surprised. Chen Du continued, and said that he would explain the situation simply so they could understand. He explained that the seeded players in this competition were Zhou Xiaogu and Ku Zhongtian from the High City team and Wu Zhang from the Lu City team. Chen Du pointed out that the High City team had 2 powerful fighters, making them very difficult to defeat. Because of that, he believed their best chance of winning was to ambush Wu Zhang first. Hearing this, Lu Bo looked surprised and questioned his plan. He asked if Chen Du wasn't actually helping the High City team eliminate a major rival by doing this. Chen Du calmly shook his head and explained that Lu Bo was mistaken. If Wu Zhang wasn't eliminated here, he might not even make it into the top 3. He then explained the tournament structure logically. According to the rules, all 4 of them could enter the second round, and teammates would not fight each other in that round. Chen Du also pointed out that this year the host city was High City. Because of that, he believed the match arrangements would likely push him to fight Wu Zhang, so that the High City team members could advance smoothly. He continued his reasoning. In the second round, regardless of whether he or Wu Zhang won, the winner would still have to face 2 fighters from the High City team consecutively in the third round. As Chen Du imagined the situation, the silhouettes of the 2 High City fighters appeared before him, like obstacles blocking the path to the championship. Looking at those looming opponents, Chen Du asked his teammates whether he could defeat 3 Tier 1 perfect fighters in 2 days. Hearing that, Lu Bo finally understood Chen Du's plan, and commented that it was no wonder Chen Du was so focused on taking out Wu Zhang. He even remarked that the plan felt like under-the-table manipulation and called it quite dark. Chen Du did not deny it. Instead, he calmly admitted that the plan was a bit unfair to his teammates. He explained that he could not guarantee a victory against Wu Zhang, and if they failed, they would all be eliminated in the first round. Hearing this, his teammates remained calm. They said they already understood their own strength and were simply participating, so they did not mind the risk. However, Moret raised an important question. He asked how Chen Du planned to find Wu Zhang, and whether it was even possible to locate him. Chen Du answered confidently. He explained that with Wu Zhang's arrogant personality and strength, he would definitely head toward the area with the highest number of badge marks to snatch more badges. As they walked through the forest, Chen Du revealed the final step of his plan. He said they needed to intercept Wu Zhang on the path leading to the exit, where the badge marks were most concentrated. With a faint smile, Chen Du pointed ahead, indicating the location. In the distance, a steep hill could be seen, suggesting the place where many competitors would gather, exactly where Wu Zhang was most likely to appear. Chen Du and his teammates reached the top of a steep cliff and looked down below. From above, they saw a group of people fighting desperately against a fierce monster. That creature was surrounded by blazing red energy as it attacked with overwhelming power. Chen Du's eyes narrowed as he observed the scene carefully. He recognized the creature and was shocked that it was a BB wolf, a monster from the crystal space. He couldn't understand why such a creature would appear here. At the same time, a thought crossed their minds. According to the Alien Race Handbook, all monsters discovered by humanity were recorded there, yet the monsters from the crystal space were not listed at all. This led to a shocking possibility. He began to suspect that all monsters from the crystal space might actually originate from the spirit realm. Chen Du's expression turned serious as he processed this information. Meanwhile, below the cliff, a girl named Xiao Mei angrily shouted that everything happening was because of Wu Zhang, clearly frustrated by the dangerous situation they were facing. The BB wolf roared as one of her teammates was sent flying through the air by its powerful attack. Its red eyes glowed fiercely as it charged forward with deadly speed. Amid the chaos, her teammate shouted urgently, telling Xiao Mei to run. On the ground, Xiao Mei fell back in shock, unable to react as danger rushed toward her. Just as the attack was about to hit, a sudden burst of blue energy struck down, stopping the BB wolf's advance. Xiao Mei stared in disbelief and called out, thinking it was her teacher who had saved her. But it was Chen Du who stood in front of her, blocking the attack and protecting her. After cutting down the BB wolf, Chen Du stepped forward calmly and asked if they had seen Wu Zhang. One of Xiao Mei's injured participants answered while being supported by Morat. He explained that after their first mark point turned out to be empty, they had continued toward the second mark point. On the way, they unexpectedly encountered Wu Zong, who was fighting against 10 monsters like the one they had just faced. The injured student explained that they had originally planned to follow the teacher's instructions and retreat if they encountered Wu Zong. However, things did not go as expected. They were suddenly targeted by the monsters and chased all the way to this place. Chen Du listened calmly and then asked where the battle was happening. One of them quickly pointed into the forest and said it was over there. Hearing this, Chen Du recalled that there were no badge marks in that direction. He found it strange and wondered why Wu Zong would be fighting there. He thought carefully. When something unusual happens, it usually means something is wrong. But if the situation was real, then Wu Zong's stamina must already be nearly exhausted by now. To him, this looked like a rare opportunity. Without hesitation, he decided to move. He told the others to go, and the group immediately rushed forward through the forest. As they ran, Moritz said that they were lucky today, as everything was turning out exactly the way they wanted. Then he asked Chen Du if he had any battle plans. But Chen Du was still thinking about how those students had pointed at the forest. As they moved forward, Chen Du called out to his teammates and told them not to act rashly after they arrived. He said that he had a strange and ominous feeling, and asked everyone to follow his commands from that moment on. The others looked at him seriously and agreed without hesitation. The group continued running deeper into the forest, their figures moving quickly through the mist as leaves drifted through the air. Little did they know, somewhere ahead, a terrifying baby wolf, with sharp fangs and glowing red eyes radiated danger, silently watching the surroundings. The area they had entered was known as the Forest Wolf Woods. After running for a long time, Moray began to feel uneasy. He wondered if they had taken the wrong path, since they had been moving for so long but still had not seen any sign of Wu Zong. As the group moved forward, something suddenly passed by them. Chen Du stopped and realized the truth. They had been tricked. Before anyone could react, several terrifying baby wolves appeared behind them. The beast wolves emerged from the darkness, their red eyes glowing as they surrounded the group. Lu Bo and Moret were shocked to see them, and they called out to Chen Du, asking what they were. Chen Du quickly analyzed the situation. He concluded that what those 3 people had said earlier was only half true. It was true that they had seen Wu Zang, but his actual location was definitely not on this path. He realized that those people had seen their badges and deliberately guided them here, planning to use these beast wolves to kill them and then collect their badges afterward. Looking around, they saw the full danger. There were nearly 20 wolves. It was clearly a wolf den. Moret remarked that this was like using one force to eliminate another. Chen Du stayed calm and assessed their strength. He noted that although there were fewer wolves than in the crystal space, their life intensity was much higher. He immediately gave instructions. He warned everyone not to bleed, because he had noticed earlier that these beast wolves would go berserk when they smelled blood. He also explained that the wolves mainly attacked using the spikes on the backs of their claws, telling everyone to pay close attention to their claws as the battle was about to begin. Without hesitation, Chen Du moved first. He leaped forward with incredible speed, his body cutting through the air as his attack came crashing down. In the next instant, his blade struck one of the beast wolves with overwhelming force, releasing a powerful burst of energy. Far away, observers watched the scene unfold. They were surprised as they realized that the Liang City team had actually walked straight into a wolf den. Some of them shook their heads, thinking the team had carelessly followed the wrong path without checking their navigation. To them, it seemed foolish that the team would be eliminated so soon after winning a match. Others were even more certain of the outcome. They believed that facing 20 native wolves was far beyond the team's ability. In their opinion, only a top expert like Senior Sister Zhou from the High City team would have the strength to handle such a situation. Watching the scene, Chen Du's principal questioned whether Chen Du and his team would really be eliminated in the very first round. Nearby, the Kun City principal let out a sigh, already convinced of the result. He remarked that it looked like they would all be leaving together that night. Then a black-haired man turned to Principal Zhou and asked for his opinion. Since the 3 students had encountered a medium-sized wolf den, what were their chances of surviving? Principal Zhou remained calm and gave a simple answer. Their chances were less than 10%. Hearing this, the black-haired man was stunned, unable to believe that the odds were truly that low. As the battle continued, Principal Zhou explained that the badge snatch battle had been organized specifically for these young geniuses to experience real devastation. Even though the cities looked peaceful and comfortable, the outside world was filled with monsters and destruction. These students, who were destined to become martial artists, needed to face reality. Hearing this, the black-haired man questioned whether the danger could be avoided if the students simply stayed away from wolf dens. In response, Principal Joe explained that things were not that simple. The badges had been deliberately placed behind areas that looked safe but were actually wolf dens. If the students followed the navigation blindly without thinking, they would inevitably pass through these dangerous zones. Still, encountering beast wolves was not always a bad thing. If they only faced a few, the students might be strong enough to protect themselves. However, in this case, the Liang City team was simply unlucky. They had run into a medium-sized wolf den with a full group of 20 wolves. Hearing this, the black-haired man wondered whether the High City team would be able to pass through such dangers smoothly. Principal Joe confidently responded that the High City team had strong members like Zhou Xiaogu and Ku Zhongtian. Even if they encountered a large wolf den, it would not be enough to stop them. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, Chen Du had already killed some wolves. He stood calmly with his sword in hand. A powerful aura surrounded him as he looked at the fallen enemies. Without any hesitation, he concluded that the beast wolves were too weak to withstand even a single blow from him. Immediately, more wolves jumped high into the sky and charged at Chen Du. They tried to surround him from all directions. Seeing them coming, Chen Du quickly assessed the situation. He realized that most of the wolves' attention had already been drawn toward him. As long as the BB wolves did not enter their berserk state, his two teammates should be able to hold their ground. Chen Du started fighting many wolves at the same time. Lu Bo and Mare noticed this and shouted his name in alarm, but another wolf attacked them. Mare immediately reacted and blocked its attack. As he fought that wolf, he called out to Lu Bo, saying they needed to finish off their opponents as quickly as possible so they could support Chen Du. Without hesitation, Lu Bo rushed forward, his body moving like a streak of light as he struck at the attacking wolves. He shouted that they should split the enemies, each taking 3 wolves to handle. The battle intensified as their attacks collided with the wolves in rapid succession. Meanwhile, Chen Du remained composed. With a calm expression, he activated his technique. In an instant, a powerful force spread across the ground, turning the battlefield into something like a prison. Energy surged outward, trapping the wolves within his domain as the fight reached its peak. Chen Du raised his sword high into the air as lightning-like energy gathered around him. With a focused expression, he unleashed his technique. Flowing light sword art, second stance, golden drums ringing to the heavens. In the next instant, his attack descended with overwhelming force. A powerful golden shockwave erupted outward, slamming directly into the beast wolf below. The impact was devastating, crushing the wolf under the sheer force of the strike. Without pausing, Chen Du followed up immediately. His movements became even faster and sharper as he activated the next technique, flowing light sword art, third stance, breeze in the forest. His figure blurred as countless sharp energy lines cut through the air, slicing toward the enemies with precision and speed, leaving no room for escape. Just then, 3 BB wolves suddenly leapt down from above, surrounding Chen Du from different directions. Their red eyes glowed as they rushed in to attack him at the same time. Without hesitation, Chen Du moved. He activated the next technique, flowing light sword, fourth form, Azure Dragon Precision Thrust. His body shot forward like lightning, and his sword pierced through the incoming attacks with extreme accuracy. The strike cut through the wolves in a single clean motion. Having fought them countless times in the crystal habitat, Chen Du already knew their attack patterns, movements, and coordination like the back of his hand. Just then, he heard someone shouting in frustration and looked back. It was Mo Ludo, struggling against the Bibi wolves, frustration flickering across his face. He gritted his teeth, realizing that despite always being ranked first, he had now become a burden to the team. At the same time, a heavy pressure filled the battlefield. The remaining wolves slowly closed in, their killing intent rising. Chen Du steadied himself and observed them carefully. He realized that these Bibi wolves had a life intensity of at least level 5, and the strongest among them was nearly level 6.5. Even though he could exert power equal to level 7 life intensity, he couldn't attack freely unless the wolves made the first move. The next moment, a wolf suddenly lunged forward with explosive speed, its claws tearing through the air as it aimed straight for Lu Bo. Chen Du quickly analyzed the situation and realized that Lu Bo was barely holding on against 3 BB wolves. Because of that, he couldn't provide any support to Mo Lete. A sharp thought crossed Chen Du's mind. His power and speed were still lacking just a little. If he could push himself just a bit further, things might change. He clenched his jaw and calculated calmly. He needed to improve by another 10%. If his sword became just a little faster, they might be able to fight their way out. At that moment, one of the BB wolves roared loudly, its jaws wide open as it lunged forward with killing intent, its claws slashing through the air as it attacked from the side. But Chengdu moved instantly. His sword flashed, releasing multiple streaks of blue light that cut through the incoming attacks and forced the wolves back. Even so, the pressure around him only grew heavier. He knew they were running out of time. They had only 2 minutes left. If they couldn't reduce the number of BB wolves to single digits, escaping would be impossible. A bead of sweat slid down his face as his eyes sharpened. He pushed himself further, his determination rising. His sword had to become faster than ever before. In the next moment, a powerful aura surged around him, and his focus reached its peak. Chengdu moved at extreme speed, his sword flashing as blue and red streaks cut through the air. His attacks became sharper and faster, each swing flowing more smoothly than before. He could feel it clearly now. This was the feeling he had been searching for. His eyes sharpened as he continued striking, maintaining perfect balance between speed and control. As long as he could hold on to this state, they still had a chance to survive. But suddenly, a voice broke through the battlefield. Lu Bo shouted that this was bad. Mo Leite's arm had been slashed. Chengdu's expression changed instantly. At the same time, Mo Leite stood surrounded by enemies, his body trembling from exhaustion. He lowered his head slightly, guilt filling his face. In a weak voice, he apologized. The situation had become even more dangerous. Chengdu immediately shouted that the wolves were about to enter a berserk state and ordered everyone to leave immediately. Mo Leite looked shocked and hesitated for a moment, trying to say something, but the situation did not allow it. In the next instant, a terrifying red aura erupted as one of the BB wolves lunged forward at high speed. At the same time, Chengdu moved. Lightning burst around his body as he dashed forward, intercepting the attack. His figure blurred as he clashed directly with the incoming wolf. He struck with full power. The impact shook the ground as the wolf hit the ground. Chengdu made a decision. He said he would stay behind to hold them off. He added that Instructor Ling was hiding in the shadows, so he would not die. He explained that this was the only way they would have a chance to make it to the next round. Chengdu shouted at them to go immediately. Mo Leite hesitated for a moment, but Lin Bo grabbed him and said they could not hold Chengdu back anymore. They had no choice but to leave. As they turned and ran, Chengdu stood alone, holding his sword firmly. He knew that in their berserk state, the BB wolves temporarily gained increased speed and strength. However, they also lost their reason and would attack the nearest living target in their sight. Chengdu remained calm. He recalled that he had already faced 30 berserk BB wolves in the crystal space. To him, this was the perfect chance to refresh his experience. In the next moment, a massive berserk wolf appeared before him, its body radiating a violent red aura. The beast lunged forward at high speed, its claws tearing through the air as it aimed straight for him. Chengdu did not retreat. He raised his sword and prepared to meet the attack head-on. As the wolf's claws came down, his blade moved instantly, clashing directly against the strike. As Chengdu clashed with the wolf, he immediately realized something was wrong. He sensed that the creature had reached level 7 life intensity, far stronger than before. At the same time, the scene was being broadcast in the Haicheng No. 1 high school auditorium, where principals watched the battle unfold. One of them commented that facing a medium-sized wolf den in a berserk state would stop even someone who had mastered Tier 1 martial arts to 99%. Another sighed, saying it was a pity. They had hoped to witness a showdown between the 4 great perfections in the second round. Someone else added that if Zhou Xiaogu and Ku Zhongtian from the Haicheng team faced this situation, it would be easy for them. Despite that, one observer, Principal Zhou's friend Mr. Ku, admitted that Chengdu was quite tough to have survived this long without being eliminated. Principal Zhou agreed, saying Chengdu was impressive. So impressive that it felt a bit strange. Curious, Mr. Qiu asked if there was something unusual about him. In response, Principal Zhou revealed that he had just checked Chengdu's profile and discovered that he had never even left Liang City before coming to Haicheng. He offered the document to Mr. Qiu. Seeing this, Mr. Kuo dismissed the concern, stating that it was not that strange, since martial arts mainly depended on talent. Principal Zhou clarified that the issue was not Chengdu's martial arts proficiency, but his fighting style. Mr. Kuo asked how that could be. Principal Zhou explained that Chengdu's flowing light sword was not yet perfect, meaning his martial art had not reached Tier 1 at 99%. Yet despite that, he could predict attacks without even looking. On the battlefield, Chengdu moved smoothly, his sword tracing arcs of light as he dodged and countered the wolf's attacks with precise timing. Watching this, Principal Joe continued, saying that Chen Du fought as if he had survived countless life-and-death battles, like someone who had carved his way out of piles of corpses on the front lines. He added that ordinary people did not even know about the spirit realm, let alone creatures like Bibi wolves. At first he had assumed Chen Du must have a background with the extreme martial hall, with access to detailed information about such beasts. But now it was clear Chen Du was actually just a kid from an ordinary family, with no background at all. Meanwhile, the battle continued as Chen Du pressed forward without hesitation. Chen Du stepped forward, his foot pressing firmly against the ground as his body steadied into position. A powerful aura surged around him, blue energy rising as he gripped his sword tightly. The surrounding Bibi wolves closed in, their bodies tense as they prepared to attack from all directions. In the next moment, multiple wolves lunged forward, their claws slicing through the air with sharp red streaks. Chen Du remained calm. With a swift motion, he swung his sword and used the forest breeze technique. A wave of blue energy burst outward, cutting through the incoming attacks as the wolves were forced back by the force of his strike. Inside his mind, Chen Du quickly analyzed the situation. Among the wolves, the strongest one possessed level 7 life intensity, while the rest ranged between level 6 and 6.5. Although there were only about a dozen of them, their overall strength surpassed even the green firefly giant he had previously defeated in the crystal space. Without hesitation, Chen Du moved again. His sword carved through the air, unleashing a powerful strike, thundering war drums. A massive surge of energy erupted forward, crashing directly toward the incoming wolf. Then Chen Du struck sharply against a tree behind him, its tip piercing forward with precision as he launched himself upward. In the next instant, his body twisted mid-air, moving with speed as he leaped again, adjusting his position against the massive tree behind him. His movements were fast and controlled, but a drop of sweat slid down his face, showing the pressure he was under. Inside his mind, a single thought echoed. He had to find the key to breaking through. Without stopping, Chen Du pushed forward again. His foot slammed against the surface as he accelerated, rushing straight ahead. At that moment, multiple Bibi wolves surrounded him from the ground, their glowing red eyes locked onto him as they closed in from all directions. One wolf looked different from the others, slightly smaller in size. Chen Du recognized it and reacted immediately, saying that this one was the key. He decided to cut it off and prevent it from calling for the helpers waiting nearby. Chen Du charged in without hesitation. He lowered his body and swung his sword down with force, releasing a powerful burst of blue energy that sliced off that wolf's head. But in the next second, a sudden red slash shot forward at high speed, shocking Chen Du with the incoming attack. He had already been pushed to his limit. Constantly dodging back and forth while fighting had drained a huge amount of his stamina. Now he stood surrounded. The Bibi wolves closed in from all directions, their glowing eyes fixed on him. Seeing this, Chen Du tightened his grip on his sword, his breathing steady but heavy. In his mind, a clear thought formed. He could not drag this fight any longer. He had to end it quickly.